I'd like to call this meeting to order. I'm sitting in for the mayor tonight, just in case you didn't recognize me. I'm the assistant. When he's gone, I'm the guy. I would like to file a roll call, please.
Guggen?
Here.
English?
Here.
Wood?
Here.
Evans? Here. Miller?
Here.
Oh, I don't have to answer that.
You're
That's
here,
interesting. I'm here. All right, we don't have an invocation scheduled tonight, and so we're going to move on to the pledge. And Mr. Guggen, if you would, be so...
Honored. Ready? Begin. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Moving along, any amendments to the agenda tonight? Seeing none, moving on. Presentations, Michael Priest, Library Director.
Council members, it's my pleasure to stand here before you today to celebrate quite an achievement. Tonight, the Coeur d'Alene Public Library wishes to recognise Faye Sweeney's 42 years of service on the Library Board. First of all, we'll hear from Library Board Chair Jim Windish, and then Faye will come and say a few words herself. At the end, I welcome Council President Mick Evers to present Faye with a certificate. Not on the screen, but that doesn't matter. Okay, as well as tonight's recognition, in the near future, we hope to add a decorative book to a display downstairs in the library on the lower level. So the shelves feature books with some familiar names on the spines. Each book is wood, it's been carved, and has decorative painting upon it. It recognises sterling service to the library through the years, from some very special people. And I believe Faye's book might be just a little bit longer than those that are already there. I will now hand it over to Library Board Chair Jim Windish.
Thank you, council members. When Faye Sweeney began serving as a Coeur d'Alene Public Library trustee, there were about 20,000 people living in Coeur d'Alene, and the library building was the historic home at the corner of 7th and Lakeside that now houses the law firm of Lyons O'Dowd. 42 years later, our city's population has nearly tripled, and we have this beautiful library building that serves not only as our library and public meeting space, but essentially our city living room. Through all that time, Faye cared for the library as the essential public asset that it is. Whenever an issue came before the board, Faye's fellow trustees could count on her to research how other libraries in Idaho and the larger region handled similar challenges. She took the position seriously and always sought out greater knowledge and skills for library oversight by attending trainings and seminars from the Idaho Commission for the Libraries. Faye was the first trustee that I spoke with when I was encouraged to apply to the board in early 2020. At that point, I had known her as one of my favorite English teachers years earlier at Lake City High School. She shared her love of books with the class, but also held us to a high standard when it came to our writing. Joining her on the board, I found that she held the documents produced by the board to that same high standard. Her suggestions always ensured that our policies were clear, concise, and grammatically correct. Her tenure as a library trustee represents over a third of the Coeur d'Alene Public Library's history. The library's growth and improvement in that time is easy to see in this building, but Faye's greatest legacy for the library is in the stability and smooth operation that came from her steadfast commitment to doing the work of a library trustee, providing careful financial oversight and developing good policies. It has been an honor to serve with her. Thank you for your 42 years of service, Faye.
Thank you very much, Jim. Can I be heard? I'm really bad at microphones. Thank you very much, Jim, for those kind words. It's been a privilege to get to serve this long and play my little role in what's happened in Coeur d'Alene's library. There's a saying that bad libraries seek to build collections, good libraries seek to build services, great libraries seek to build communities. And I've had the privilege of serving with a whole long string of trustees and 3 different library directors who were passionate about libraries and convinced that that's what Coeur d'Alene wanted as a library. And I also feel grateful to all of the former city council members, individuals, and mayors who shared that vision with us and helped make it possible and have continued through to this day. So thank you very much. But it takes a village to build a library, and I'm grateful to the Friends and the Foundation who've made it possible. So it's been an honor and a privilege and a gift. Thank you.
Thanks, Faye. Thanks for all the years. I was thinking of all the people that you knew along the way from here. You're right up there with Edinger, aren't you? The amount of years. All right, moving on. Announcement, City Council? Kiki?
I've got a few things I wanted to share. I am the liaison to the library, and again, thank you, Faye. 42 years of very dedicated service. The city is just very grateful. I find it interesting that in our monthly stats report, August, there was 21,645 visitors, which is more people than the entire population of Coeur d'Alene when Faye started. So that was in 1 month. A couple of other things, the library received a couple of grants for their Chrome laptops, and they just approved their strategic plan this last meeting. I also wanted to share with the rest of council that I had the privilege of attending and being one of the hosts for a welcoming dinner for the new crew members of the USS Idaho, which is a nuclear submarine. I was accompanied by Councilmember Gookin and his spouse, who is a veteran, as well as Councilmember Wood, who is a veteran, and her spouse, and we were all able to sit at different tables and speak with these young enlisted men and women who are going to be great representatives of the state of Idaho in the first named submarine in over 100 years for that's going to be stationed off of the East Coast. And it was a great night, and I was very proud of our community for stepping up and being there. So that was great. The other thing I wanted to mention is I've recently been appointed to the Association of Idaho Cities Board of Directors, and I will be going down there to be sworn in on the 24th of October to finish out this last term. So I'll be representing Region 1, which is the 5 counties of Northern Idaho. I just went, wait a minute, that's not the 5 counties, this region. And so I'm looking forward to learning more about that. And the Association of Idaho Cities is a great resource for learning how good governance for staff, electeds, and how to use best practices in building great cities. So I'll be excited to join that board.
That's
all I have.
exciting. That's exciting.
I'll keep you posted.
Here to go. Anybody else? No election stories or anything?
Oh, we could tell you stories,
Oh, yeah.
but that's not on the agenda.
We'll come back to that, right? All right. The mayor would like to make a motion to have Ira Sigler to the Child Care Commission.
Second?
Need a first.
Oh, I'll make that motion.
Oh, I thought you're the mayor.
I know. I'm just sitting in this spot.
I'm sorry,
Remember that.
Woody, we aren't used to this. Your voice made me think that was the first, and we'll get it.
All right. So it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Could I vote on that one, Randy?
Yeah, you should do a roll call.
You don't get to vote on it.
Yeah. Okay. So we're moving along.
He wants a roll call.
Roll call
It's a roll
vote?
call.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
It's on the agenda as a roll call.
Can I have a roll call, please?
Gookin,
Yes.
English,
Yes.
Wood,
Yes.
Evans. Yes. Miller.
Aye.
All right, moving along, public comments. This is time for the public to comment. You have 3 minutes. This is not concerning the appeal. It's a little bit later on, okay? So I have a list of about 4 people, so look forward to hear what you have to say. Cody Johns is first up. Cody? Welcome.
I'm sorry, I meant to write for the appeal portion.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Diana Sheridan. Welcome, Diana.
Thank you. Good evening, council members. First, I have a thank you. Thank you for moving the public comment so that it is now before the consent agenda, thus giving the public the opportunity to comment on all the action items before the council. Thank you. I appreciate that. Changing topics. In the past couple of years, CDA has used the city's reserve fund to balance the budget. The current city council recently approved the budget for fiscal year 23-24. This budget was created and brought into balance by raising taxes by 3% while simultaneously assigning another $2.6 million of the city's reserve funds to fill the deficit and bring the budget into balance. This will leave the city's reserves at approximately 16.5% of annual scheduled expenses. Best practices for cities is 16 to 17%. CDA is now inside of that range. Fiscal year budget for 24-25 is projected to decrease our reserves again by another 25% to 12.5% of expenses. This is only accomplished because it has been calculated that the police force is going to not be fully funded. So this does not, it would be a lower percentage if the number had been used that was the full payroll for a full staff. This is planning our reserves to be well below the recommended practices. During one of the meetings, Council Member Dan, you mentioned a couple of things to look at as possible areas for some deductions. Where can we cut some costs? Not one person moved to do another committee meeting in order to do a deeper dive now, prior to the finalization and the motion to pass our current budget for this next year. So I'm suggesting that there's a deep dive needed for sure, because continuing to eat through our reserves at the pace that we're going, once we get to next year, not this year's budget, but the following years, we're going to be in a situation that's not tenuous to go that far below what's the recommended level for reserves. So I'm requesting that the deep dive starts now, rather than waiting until towards the end of this fiscal year to start looking into it on a deeper level. I'm suggesting do it now. And my request is to, start that review process now and get the ball rolling so we can turn this around and we don't end up with a worst case scenario at the end of this fiscal year headed into next. Thank you.
Thanks, Diana. Clark Albertron. Welcome, Clark.
Good evening, council members, and thank you sincerely for your invitation for us to speak and comment. I appreciate it sincerely. I'd like to echo Diane Sheridan's concerns about using reserves to balance the budget, and in her request to begin a process of that review sooner than later. I have no other comments at this time, but I will later. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Last but not least, Justin, come on down.
Mr. McEvers. I love when the teacher's gone and he's got a substitute. Best days. 2:32. All right, I'll do my best. All right. Now, I have a PSA. Townspeople, it's time for your annual enemas. And I'm sick and tired about hearing all of you feel bad after your enemas. Shut up. And for all of you keeping your mouth shut about your long-term enema effects, thank you. And for all of the insurers with cold feet over giving the pharmacy chains insurance for the enemas, insure the enemas. Insure them. And for all you chain pharmacies nervous about giving the little babies the enemas, you give the little babies the enemas. We give the little babies 36 enemas when they pop out. It's like, welcome to America, baby. Here's 36 enemas. 1 enema, 2 enema, 3 enema. Excuse me. I love baby enemas in the fall time. It's very important. I have a list of, okay, baby enemas, all right. Excuse me, the tourists are gone, Mr. McEvers, and we can now get down to business, and we're starting with banning books. As you know, the sheriff went to the library and checked out 2 books he deemed inappropriate with the intention of not returning them. The sheriff stole books from the library, and I put him up to it. He said he was doing it for the children. He was actually doing it to divide the community. Little does he know. The law is now in the sheriff's hands. The sheriff is also now known as Porn Hunter Bob, and he has had a long, decorated career for central planning. He's worked with the CIA, with the FBI, and Mossad. It's all on his bio. And he's also worked in some of our sheriff gangs in Los Angeles, and that's not a gang task force. It's a white supremacist gang known as the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department. I have a list of books we're burning next, by the way. 1984 by George Orwell. Winston boinks Julia in that book, where they thought the cameras couldn't see them, but the joke's on them. O'Brien and I were watching. Banned. The Great Gatsby. We all saw Leo in the movie. He's so hot. He's even hot when he's fat. To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee uses the word whore lady. Catch-22 uses the word whore. Brave New World, all the women's in that book, whores. Slaughterhouse-5, sex, violence, and obscenity. So it is banned, and the list goes on and on. You know what, Mr. McEvers? These meetings are actually getting out of hand. Last time, I spoke about probing grandmothers. This time, I've spoken about enemas. Get your enemas, people. This is the time for your fall enemas. 2 for 1, I think, still, is what the deal is. And I've also said the word sex and whores a bunch of time during this meeting. So for the safety of community, I'm going to need to prevent you from broadcasting these meetings. I believe there's a bunch of expensive equipment back there. I want all that. That's mine now, okay, for your safety. I want that camera. I want this camera. Which one? I think it's that camera. I want that camera now for your safety. All right, and now it's also time for a book burning. So I think I can sell this stuff for adrenochrome, and then we can burn a book. Oh, we're out of time. I ran out of time. Okay, we'll burn a book next time. Thank you.
A special moment has just been by. Moving on. Consent calendar. Council?
Sure, I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar as presented.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Discussion? Thoughts? All those in favor say aye.
Well, it's a roll call, sir.
Everything's roll call.
Yeah,
Sorry.
pretty much.
I'm new here. Roll call, please. Thank you.
Gookin.
Gookin votes aye.
English. English. Yes. Wood.
Yes.
Evans. Yes. Miller.
Aye.
Thank you. Moving on. Resolution 23073, approval of a contract with R&R Northwest LLC for the 3rd Street Mooring Dock Replacement Project. And welcome, Monty McCulley. How are you?
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. So tonight, the Parks Department is asking Council to accept the bid for the 3rd Street Mooring Dock Replacement Project from R&R Northwest. So the 3rd Street Mooring Dock is getting close to 25 years old. It's made out of wood and has reached pretty much the end of its lifespan. Wood doesn't last forever. It gets waterlogged and start to sink. Over the past 5 or 6 years, the department has spent an increasing amount of money on repairs to keep the dock safe. So last year, we went out for a grant for the waterfront improvement grant through the Idaho Department of Parks and Rec, and we were approved. So the original estimate to rebuild the dock was $511,500, and the city committed to paying a 32% match on that. It went out to bid, and it actually came in at $483,823. So it came in under that amount, but we're still committed to pay the 32%. So the city's match would then be $154,823. So where's that money coming from? The state WIF grant fund awarded us $329,000, and we have our own water improvement fund that we are going to use $154,823, and that'll get us to the total we need. R&R Northwest was the lowest bid out of 3 bids, and so we are hoping that you guys will select them. So accepting this bid will allow the city to rebuild the 3rd Street mooring docks with better materials. These materials are expected to last closer to 50 years instead of the 20-25 years that wood gets us. And so we are recommending that council accepts the bid for the 3rd Street mooring dock replacement project from R&R Northwest.
All right, any questions? Mr. Guggen?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. Monty, it doesn't really say in here what was budgeted. Do I assume that the amount budgeted was the 32% of the original $500,000?
Correct.
Okay, so we saved a little bit of money.
A little bit, yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Anyone else? I have a
Mayor.
question. So is the design stay the same, or are you expanding, or is it being built to be able to expand?
Well, the prices of docks have gone up quite a bit, but the money given away in grants hasn't quite matched it yet. This is the largest grant they've ever given. It's usually not above $300,000, so we were pretty fortunate that they went above that. So we weren't able to really expand the footprint at all. The amount of money we had was just to replace exactly what was already out there with better, newer materials.
So the design works.
Yeah.
Ms. Wood?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. I just want to recognize that Monty went out and sought out that grant. And sometimes there's discussion about whether our community should take federal grants. Well, maybe there's sometimes we shouldn't, but I know I pay federal taxes. And the fact of the matter is we do need to replace those docks. And I just really appreciate your efforts to go secure the money for those docks. You did a fantastic job.
Thank you.
I just wanted,
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
I'll be
Go
bigger.
ahead. I have to look to the left now.
Monty, which docks of the ones that are at 3rd Street, the long pier ones and the boat slips, is this covering all of the replacement?
Well, the long pier ones, we call those the launch docks, and we replaced those a couple years ago with the same grant. So these are the mooring docks which are to the south of the Bowie Boys restaurant, where people can come in and park their boats for several hours or overnight.
And that's
It's
where the
like-
fire boat
Yeah.
is
right next to
attached
that.
to now, so that whole section. Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
Other questions?
One more comment, just to what Christie said. So, yeah, that's an issue with a lot of people is federal strings. This is the grant, and this is the strings. And the strings basically say that we have to comply with regulations. We can't discriminate. We have to apply to the federal rules for subcontractors. We have to file information and reports with them, and that's it. And then there's little sanctions for non-compliance. So those are the federal strings. There's nothing really nefarious in here. So thank you.
All right. Hearing nothing else, look for a motion, please.
Mr. Mayor,
I'm sorry.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 23-073, approving approval of a contract with R&R Northwest LLC for the 3rd Street mooring dock replacement project.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Guggen,
Yes.
English,
Yes.
Wood,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Miller.
Aye.
Moving along, thanks.
Thank you.
Resolution 23074, approving the agreement with Stancraft Construction Group for Streets and Engineering Building Remodel Project. And Todd from the Street Department's here. Welcome, Todd.
Good evening, council. Thank you for having me. Look forward tonight, come to you looking to award a contract with Stancraft Construction Group for our remodel of the Streets and Engineering Building. We've been working hard on this all year to get the number down to where we think we can do it. We had 5 bidders look at the project. We only had 2 submit bids. We advertised twice, August 17th and August 24th. We opened the bid September 21st with 2 responding bids. I'd like to note right now that Stancraft has came tonight. They're in the audience. I really appreciate that. To me, that shows their vested interest in this project. So anyway, they came, they worked. They are the one contractor that came and looked through the whole project, so I'm very confident. We received 2 bids. Stancraft's bid was $1,036,987. T.W. Clark's came in at $1,118,400. So they were the lower bid. Both those bids were lower than what we were first told on the engineer's estimate, so we were excited to see that. We were worried that it was going to be too expensive for us to go and do this project. Through the last year, we've done a lot of creative design, trying to fit this to what we can do. Streets and Engineering will be helping with this project with a couple of the tasks to keep the number where we want. So it won't take us from things that we need to be doing. It'll be in a timely manner. Some of it will be done during our night shift in the winter when the guys aren't plowing. So anyway, I'm hoping they're not plowing. Anyway, the financial analysis of this was, again, the project was bid at $1,036,987. Our budget included this year $1 million for this project. We came to that with $600,000 from the American Rescue Plan Act, $400,000 from fund balance savings from our fiscal year, this current fiscal year. And then the remainder to get us to that number was $36,987. That was some savings from the dump truck we purchased when we had gone out for that bid. The dump truck was estimated up here, and we got it for this because it wasn't. It was delayed, but it came in under budget and didn't cost what we were anticipating. This project will provide for us new office spaces, meeting rooms, updates to restrooms for ADA compliance. It will address 3 bid alternates. One of those alternates is to update the rooftop units on the roof. If you look on our picture here, I'll show you right here just to the west of this tree where the cursor is. We will be putting a vestibule in there that will help for visitors to come to our facility. It'll look like an actual opening. Many of you have been up there and it looks like a mechanic shop, so it's kind of confusing where to go. That's what the vestibule looks like. I've shown you this before. It has glass all the way around. It'll be a waiting area with a window inside for our admin staff to greet people, so we're excited for that. Tonight, if council should accept the low bid and award this contract to Stancraft Construction Group for the Streets and Engineering Department remodel project in the amount of $1,036,987. I would stand for any questions.
Questions for Todd? Yeah.
Just a comment. Todd, we've seen this presentation a number of times now, and it has been approved in the budget. Did you happen to mention you're going to work through the winter, but what's the estimated time that it would be complete?
So we're looking for this to be completed. I need to get an official schedule from the contractor, but through the bid docs, it would be early spring. So end of March, early April is that's what we're hoping for.
And I would just like to say that I've seen some of the work that Stancraft does. It's very quality. I'm glad their bid is a low bid, and I certainly have confidence in their work. Thank you.
Dan?
Did you say that this is coming under what we had budgeted?
It's coming under the engineer estimate. We had budgeted originally $1 million for this project. Through the cost savings and the savings on the dump truck. We were able to get to the new number.
Yeah, okay. Well, I was hoping there was an extra margin, frankly, not to put it back, but because I appreciate that, so often in these projects, we cut out everything possible, and frankly, I think sometimes we cut out too much, and we're foolish in the, long term, because we, shave a little here, but it sounds like we're exactly on the mark where we need to be, what it's going to cost, and looks like it's going to do the job, so good, well done.
Thank you.
Anything else? Todd, I was just thinking how old this building is. You know, off the top of your head?
I had that in the first, I believe it was 90, I want to say 7 was, and it's pretty much original. A new roof has been put on the building in earlier years, but everything else is pretty much original from when we
So
built it.
the actual construction during nighttime, it's not going to impact the shop doing their thing, keeping trucks moving and police cars and ambulances and all that?
So, no, it won't. The project, I'm sure, will be done during daytime hours. The nighttime work would be when our staff is available to do whatever we have signed on for. Our goal is through phasing to remove people from the areas they're going to work on so that they can go in and be efficient and get the project done. So it should not affect our equipment bays as far as for the mechanics or any of those. So.
Right. Any other questions? Hearing none, look for a motion, please.
I would make a motion to approve Resolution 23074, approving of an agreement with Stancraft Construction Group for the streets and engineering building remodel.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Discussion? Thoughts? Hearing none, all those, roll call, sorry. I'll get it.
English,
They're kicking me.
Yes.
Wood,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Miller,
Hi.
Gookin.
Yep.
Thank you, guys. Moving on. Resolution 23075, approving the sole source purchase of 7 police car vehicles from Chandler's Ford in New Mexico in the amount of $365,470 simoleons. Dave, welcome.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. My request before you this evening is the approval of a sole source award for police vehicles. As Mayor Pro Tem stated, out of a dealership in New Mexico. I know that seems a little bit odd, but last year Dodge stopped making their police vehicle, and so the Ford Explorer was kind of the only show in town. And unless you're an agency that buys them by the hundreds, they are very difficult to find. In fact, our purchase attempts for last year's budget money, Ford canceled our order. We ended up finding them with a company in Montana, but we are still on the waiting list to get them upfitted, and we don't even believe we're going to get those until after the first of the year. We happened to get lucky. I had a roommate from 26 years ago that works in the public safety electronic industry. I asked him if he had any contacts. He said that he'd been to this dealership the day before. They had 20 cars. By the time we called them, they'd sold 11 of them. They were down to 9. And so we're requesting this purchase. If not, we're not sure when we would find another set of these anywhere. There's 6 that are budgeted in this year. 1 is a replacement. The money for that comes from our iCrimp. The vehicle was totaled and the vacancy savings that we have. So this will not impact the city funds outside of what's already budgeted.
Christie.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, thank you. Well, Captain Hager, we know that when people call the police, they want you to come. I always say it like I'm still there. They want you to come. You've got to have cars. And so I just really appreciate the networking that goes on, that you were able to locate these cars. You're back here trying to do police work, and I really appreciate you're not in the library looking for books, that you're looking for police cars. And that's really important because we have crime to solve. So I'm all in favor of this. We've got to grab these before they're gone.
Thank you.
Other questions? I have a quick one. Dan and I and you were talking, I thought people might interest. What makes a police car a police car? You know, that it's so expensive.
There's differences. Just the normal consumer model of the Ford Explorer has different center consoles. Ours have a steeper or a better alternator because the electronics that we pull off of there, they usually have a second battery. They also come with ballistic panels in the door. They're pre-wired for a lot of our emergency equipment. The A-pillars, the support pillars in the front are usually drilled for the spotlights in them because trying to make aftermarket changes to just a consumer model vehicle, you're going to create a lot of problems for it. They also come many times without the back seats because we put a different alternative back seat in. So instead of spending the money for your nice cloth or leather back seat, we just don't get them so they can put in the other equipment.
So they really are a different animal.
Yes.
All right. Well, no questions. I'm looking for a motion.
I'd be happy to make that motion. I motion to approve resolution number 23-075, approving the sole source purchase of 7 police vehicles from Chalmers Ford in New Mexico in the amount of $365,471.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Discussion, thoughts?
I just wanted to make a note on this comment. Someone asked me this a while back on the sole source purchase issue, just because these are unavailable. Oftentimes, city has to go out to bid for product, but when there's a definition of a sole source, it just means that there isn't another supplier available to do that. Is that?
Sometimes.
Sometimes.
In this particular case, it falls under subsection 8, where it says that where the competitive solicitation is impractical,
Okay.
disadvantageous, or unreasonable under the circumstances. And given what Captain Hagar has said, I believe it falls under that.
Great. Okay, just wanted to clear that up. Thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you. So roll call, please.
Wood,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Miller,
Aye.
Guggen,
Yep.
English.
Yes.
All right. We are going to be moving into this public hearing. And I can't think of too many times where we've had appeals come to us over the years, occasionally, but nothing in a long while, so it will be interesting. We have people signed up, a lot. I'm thinking like 3 minutes on the impact, and we also have some folks that have signed up online. So we're going to be going through this. So I'm thinking 3 minutes a person. We'll be here for a couple hours. We're hoping that you guys don't have to repeat everything. I mean, we are kind of aware of what's going on here. And Randy, are you going to carry this, or do I have to read the thing?
I've been asked to kind of give you an overview of the process.
Thank you.
This is the appeal of a denial of PUD 1-23 and subdivision S-5-23 Kaufman Estates from a decision of the Planning and Zoning Commission related to an application for a PUD or subdivision. An appeal to the City Council is governed by our municipal code, section 1709-125. The appeal is a quasi-judicial proceeding. This means that you are acting as judges. You are the judges of the facts, and it is your duty to make an ultimate decision on the appeal. It's your duty to be impartial, fair, and thorough. City ordinances require council to hold a public hearing on the appeal. This is not what is called a de novo hearing, which means that the record from the earlier Planning and Zoning Commission is also before you and has been before, or is obviously before the applicant. At this public hearing, council will hear from staff, who will provide the background relevant to the appeal without taking any side. You'll hear from the applicant, and you'll hear from members of the public who wish to testify. All evidence that is relevant to the appeal is admissible. If you have a question about the relevancy of any piece of evidence, the Mayor Pro Tem can ask legal counsel for an opinion. The council must decide this matter, must decide the appeal on a majority vote based on all of the evidence that's presented to you. Of particular importance, if any council member has received or otherwise obtained information related to this matter before tonight, you should state the information that you received, when you received it, and from whom you received it. This should be done before the applicant makes his presentation, so that he has an opportunity to address any information that you have received. If the new evidence is of such an import as it may require additional time for the applicant to respond, this hearing can be continued. The appellant has what we call the burden of persuasion, which means that the appellant must show or prove that his application should be granted under all of the ordinances and all of the facts. A fact that is important to your decision is proved if you believe that it is more likely true than not true. At the conclusion of the hearing, council will discuss the appeal and the evidence in open session. Your options are to approve the application, to conditionally approve it, that means put conditions on your approval. You can refer it back to the Planning Commission if you think further findings are needed, or you can deny the application, the appeal, the application with or without prejudice. If something is denied without prejudice, the applicant may reapply immediately. If you deny an application or an appeal with prejudice, they must wait a year before they can reapply. In addition, council can defer a decision to a later date if you feel that the parties themselves, either the applicant or the public, should provide additional information that you feel is necessary to your decision. In making your decision under our ordinance, it says that the council should consider the purpose and intent of the PUD regulations as well as the language of those regulations. A worksheet has been provided to you which indicates what the applicant must show in order to have an approval granted. The decision should be made by motion. In the motion, whoever makes the motion, each element on the worksheet should be discussed, and you should include as many specific facts as you find relevant and as you find have been proved that support your decision. On a case like this where there are many people who are set up to testify, we generally ask the clerk to swear in everybody all at once. That saves time and is perfectly legal, so I'll ask the clerk we'll ask anyone who's going to testify to stand and to be sworn in. But before we do that, if council has any question about the procedure, I'd be happy to help.
Any questions? Hearing none. So if everyone who is signed up to speak would stand and raise their right hand, and then Sherry's going to swear you in.
Do you solemnly swear and/or affirm that the testimony you are about to give is the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Thank you. All right, I'm just going to kind of start working through the work with me on your last names. I'm a first name guy.
Yeah, we have staff, I think. Staff starts?
That's right, okay. Staff needs to come forward. Sorry, you guys. Thank you.
The applicant comes forward. Because it's an appeal, so he has to, I think the applicant comes forward.
Oh, the applicant comes first? Sorry. Welcome.
Good evening, council members. Sorry for the delay. We're a little backwards on it's usually done, so I guess we're all bearing with each other on this. I'm Jeremy Terzulli. I represent Todd Kaufman and his sons, who are the applicant of this. I work as a project coordinator and a land use specialist with Olson Engineering, based out of Post Falls, Idaho. I personally reside in Hauser. I may ask for a little bit of leeway. I'm recovering from a head cold, so if I have to turn and cough, just give me a little patience there. Okay, so I won't be introducing any new information. I felt that our presentation at Planning and Zoning was rather comprehensive, and the basis of my appeal is specifically regarding what I felt was a little leeway or perhaps a little abuse of discretion. Abuse is kind of a harsh word, but perhaps a misplaced discretion by the Planning and Zoning Commission. And so I'll try to work through this as quickly as possible. So the PUD is actually a two-part process, the PUD, plan unit development, and the subsequent subdivision. The subdivision isn't really part of my appeal because the subdivision doesn't meet the standards of approval because we were asking for deviations within the PUD process, so the subdivision can't be approved based on the fact that the PUD was denied, which is where we were asking for the deviations from code. So I'm going to be focusing on the PUD and the standards of approval within the PUD, and we'll move through that. So this is in essence a summary of what adopted city code outlines as our review criteria for a planned unit development. It's those 7 standards of approval, and these are a summarized version of those. They don't have the codified language that's in code. The 2 highlighted in blue are what the Planning Commission felt were not met within our request, and I'm going to go through in the subsequent slides here and try to show where I believe that they were incorrect in the use of their discretion here. With regard to 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, they did not have issue with those in our presentation, so I'll focus on the 2 that are highlighted. So the Planning Commission, about a week after the hearing, they give me the denial at the hearing, and then I get the published and written decision based on the Planning Commission's findings. And so this is copied and pasted directly from that document that I received from city staff. So in the first review criteria with whether or not it is in accordance with the adopted comprehensive plan, they cited a couple of objectives or goals that they felt it did not meet. And I'm going to focus on the first 2. The last ones that they cited are sort of subjective in nature, and they could be used either way. But in the first one, objective C1 1.1, to foster broad-based and inclusive community involvement for actions affecting businesses and residents to promote community unity and involvement. Again, they felt that this objective was not met with regard to the Kaufman Estates project. We disagree in that the adopted comprehensive plan, there's a lot of community outreach that goes into that. That goes over several weeks, well, actually several years and several public hearings to get that adopted comprehensive plan. A lot of community outreach. That is when this neighborhood was identified as a compact neighborhood, and that is why we brought forth the project that we did within this neighborhood. And in addition to that, we brought the first planned unit development forth in 2022 in August, at which point there was a lot of community that showed up in opposition to our project. That meeting and that public hearing was appropriately noticed. The public was allowed to comment, either write in or show up for that public hearing and comment, and they did. Public comment for that one went about 3 hours, so a lot of input. After that public hearing, the owners, the team, and I got together and we discussed everything that was brought up at that public hearing. Tammy had a great idea to get us together with members of the neighborhood that had showed up in opposition, get us all in a room. She was nice enough to set that meeting up. It was myself, the Kaufmans, and probably about 8 or 9 homeowners in the area, and we sat down for the better part of 3 hours in one of the meeting rooms a couple months after that first public hearing. We went round and round and round and hashed things out. I still believe we left that meeting at an impasse because the residents around the area were suggesting that 5 or 6 single-family homes was what they would be in support of. We just felt that it wasn't appropriate for this particular piece of property, so we left that meeting. But based on that meeting, we cut our density by 25% of the original proposal. We increased our parking threefold or greater, increased the open space, changed the architectural style, and brought forth another PUD 1 year later. It was actually about 1 year to the day. Again, noticed properly. Again, people were allowed to write in. Again, they were allowed to show up and comment. In between all that, there was, the public would reach out to city staff and ask questions, what's going on? So
in my opinion, citing the fact that community involvement was not involved in this process, I feel is just completely disingenuous and inaccurate. There was a lot of community involvement in this project before we get to this point here today. So that, I believe, is one flaw in their written decision. Again, copied and pasted right out of the Planning Commission's findings. Coeur d'Alene will strive to be livable for median and below income levels, including young families, working class, low income, and fixed income households. Once again, felt that we were not meeting this objective with our proposal. So if objective C1 1.1 being cited was a little confusing, this one was downright baffling for me, because from the inception of this project, that has been our goal. From the first time we sat forth with staff in a pre-development meeting, our idea was to try to bring attainable housing to the market through this twin home design. Not rentals, but properties that can be owned fee simple and hopefully be that springboard housing for other people in the into traditional housing. So we got a couple slides here. This came right out of my previous presentation, and I highlighted the two areas. Intended to be workforce and entry-level housing, and provides a housing type that is underrepresented in the area. Again, poached right out of my previous presentation to the Planning Commission. This one as well. I actually cited that goal that was used to say that we didn't meet it as part of my support in my previous presentation. The staff report cited this exact goal as something for the Planning Commission to consider was being met through this proposal. So the fact that they cited it as not being met, again, I felt I was just really confused by it. It doesn't seem to hold with the denial. This came right out of the written decision as well. I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this because I think this definition is of critical importance with what I'm trying to present here. So finding B8B, that the design and planning of the site is not compatible with the location, setting, and existing uses on adjacent properties. That word adjacent is highlighted for a couple of different reasons, because there was some discussion amongst the Planning Commission as to what adjacent actually means. So this was taken right out of my previous presentation as well. I cited that several infill projects within a quarter-mile radius had occurred within the last several years, and that there was a mix of single-family, multifamily, and duplexes within a half-mile radius. So I de facto was sort of using that quarter to half-mile radius as adjacent in my presentation, and yet the discussion kept centering around the term adjacent versus abutting. And so I feel like honing in on that definition is of critical importance here. So the city attorney, during that presentation, did pull this right out of city code. This is in city code. Adjacent means near, close, or abutting. For example, a commercial zoning district across the street or highway from a residential zoning district shall be considered as adjacent. At that point, the Planning Commission kind of looked around, sort of nodded their head, and everybody felt that they had an idea of what adjacent meant. But I do feel like it was not applied further in their findings, and it was in essence used as denial. So I really want to auger down on this term adjacent and what we mean. So if they're going to reference a highway right-of-way or a highway in two properties that'll be across the highway from each other, I did some measuring on the GIS. Interstate 90 right-of-way width at 15th Street is 350 feet. The Interstate 90 right-of-way width at the 9th Street overpass, where it necks back down, that's 225 feet. State Highway 95, just south of Kathleen Avenue, is 220 feet in width. Therefore, if the city's codified definition of adjacent talks about properties that are across a highway from each other,
We're sort of honing in on that 220 feet to 350 feet being a finite definition of the word adjacent. Further, if all public noticing requires any property owner within 300 feet of a subject property's boundaries are notified by mail, that in essence sort of de facto creates what is meant by adjacent, and 300 feet falls inside of that 220 to 350 foot right-of-way width that has also been identified as adjacent. With that being said, I know this might seem trite, but there's a reason for this. This is the exact finding as pulled out of code. This is copied and pasted right out of code. The design and planning of the site is or is not compatible with the location, setting, and existing uses on adjacent properties. Applying that definition of adjacent that I just tried to outline, this is our subject property with a star to it. These are actual dimensions pulled off of GIS and applied to this slide. To the north, on Nettleton Gulch, 300 feet away, we've got 12 units on 3 parcels totaling 1.2 acres. It's all common ownership, so those are all rentals, at 10 units per acre density. 50 feet from the subject property, we got 12 units on 1 acre on a single parcel, 12 units per acre. And then an older platted lots to the south that have been there for quite some time, 10 units, they're on individual lots. That block there totals 1.4 acres for a density of 7 units per acre. 2 of those are duplex lots. That's why I feel that the term adjacent is crucially important here, because our denial talked about the adjacent property owners while omitting these 3 properties that exist within 300 feet of the property boundary. So, straight out of the Planning Commission's findings that were sent to me, the design and planning of the site is not compatible with the location, setting, and existing uses on adjacent properties. The finding is based on the effective density, the overall layout of the buildings, incompatibility of the architectural style, all of which can be changed, and the incompatibility of the massing of buildings and layout of distance and deviations requested with adjacent structures, single-family homes on larger lots. Only if you omit those 3 projects I just pointed out. They say that they're single-family homes on larger lots. It's like saying, so my daughter is the setter on the varsity Lakeland volleyball squad this year, and they're having a great year. They're undefeated if you take away the 3 losses that they have. I feel like that's what's kind of going on here. And I just feel like it's disingenuous. So here is our project that was presented. These are the 18 twin home units. The massing of the structures, we did not ask for any deviations between structures. We've got alternating 5 and 10 foot side yard setbacks. The only deviation would be the 0 lot line that is the party wall that actually denotes a twin home. The rear yard, we didn't ask for any deviations. The front yard, we didn't ask for any deviations. And the distance between structures is 15 feet as per allowed in the underlying zoning code. So once again, I feel like they're sort of gerrymandering definitions in their denial to us. This was presented to the Planning Commission and members of the public as well. This represents a by right use on this R12 zone property. This is what we could build, in essence, with a subdivision approval, duplexes. 100% guaranteed these will become rentals. There are 16 duplex sites that we could fit onto this piece of property. That represents a public road to the north, which is what's required as for approval of a subdivision project. Now, the approval of a subdivision that complies with the underlying zoning is a heck of a lot different than a PUD approval. That, as long as we can meet these review criteria, would have to be approved. Can we get 7,000 square foot minimum lot size? That's 3,500 per unit. Can we get 50 feet of frontage along a public street? That street that I was showing is the minimum street width allowed in Coeur d'Alene. We didn't just make it up, we actually did the dimensional work, and that, it works. Do we have pedestrian connectivity of all units? Can it be adequately served by available infrastructure, and can we handle our stormwater in the street side swales? Those are all yeses. We could design and submit this tomorrow, assuming a denial here, and that's likely what will happen because we've been at this for 18 months, and my client has said, I gotta do something. I can't continue to sit on this property, pay the holding costs. I'm entitled to do duplexes. I would much rather do this twin home project, but I can't go at this again and wait another year. So that's sort of where we're at. And this final slide, everything in green out there, that light green, that's all R12. Everybody that owns property in that big sea of green, ours is the starred location, is entitled to all of the land uses in the R12 zoning, in that underlying zoning. Any one of these people that owns a lot could do a subdivision if they've got the space for it. They could build duplexes on their lot as is. All of these properties in this sea of green have all the R12 entitlements, the same as the Kaufman Estates project. So again, the Planning Commission only found that those two items, compatibility with the comprehensive plan, which I've never seen a project come forth that can check every box in the comprehensive plan. It's just too robust, it covers too much ground. The comprehensive plan, same items can be used in support or against, depending on which direction you want to go. So that, by its nature, is subjective. And where I feel the discretionary bias came in was the fact that they omitted 3 properties when talking about adjacent properties and failing to recognize that as properties in this area of town, larger parcels redevelop, they redevelop more densely. That's what the guiding documents of the city are encouraging, is as larger parcels in this area of town become ready for redevelopment, they're infill opportunities, and the city recognizes that. Their guiding documents recognize that, the underlying zoning recognizes that. In my opinion, I don't think there was anything nefarious by the Planning Commission. I simply think they punted on this. I don't think they wanted to take the arrows. They wanted you guys to deal with it. That's what it felt like. And with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Questions? Mr. Gookin?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Jeremy, is it a good analogy on the adjacent, the definition of the word adjacent? I see you spent a lot of time on that, discussing what it means to have adjacent properties. And the analogy of your daughter's basketball team was good too.
Volleyball.
Volleyball, there you go. Volleyball team, that's good, but you can also say that your daughter's team hasn't won any games.
Absolutely.
Except for the ones that they've won. So, and that's kind of what I'm looking at it. So you can say adjacent properties here, here, and here. There's other adjacent properties that do not fit that same qualification. You understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely, I do.
Okay. Also, can you tell me a little bit, I have never heard the phrase twin home before. What is the
picture
difference?
a duplex, right?
It's a duplex, right?
No, it is not. Picture a duplex. Now take that wall that divides the 2 units, right? You know what a townhome is, right?
Yes.
So you've got 4 doors, let's say. Every party wall, that's the wall that's shared by the 2 units, is also the property line. The structure that sits above that, the property underneath it has its own legal description. The property above it goes with that dirt, and a bank can write a mortgage on that, and somebody can own just unit 1 or just unit 2.
And
they
you
don't
can't-
have to buy the whole structure.
So you can't do that with a duplex, I guess?
You cannot.
Okay. And so they would each have their own foundations, own electrical, own water?
There is a demising firewall, as per IBC, that's International Building Code, that means the crawl spaces have to be divided all the way up through the attic and to the roof deck. It all has to be divided so that somebody couldn't be in their attic and then all of a sudden unknowingly be in your attic.
Okay, the setbacks are a big issue for me. So when I read about the zero setbacks, I was a little concerned. But you said, so the physical buildings have a setback, you said alternating 5 and 10 feet.
Yeah, which is
Standard.
between structures is what the underlying zoning calls for. It's that party wall and zero lot line that actually denotes a twin home. It's the only deviation we ask for with regard to setbacks.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Wood?
Thank you. Jeremy, you've described these homes. Are these tiny homes?
Nope.
What's the difference between a twin home and a tiny home?
Tiny home stands alone, doesn't have that party wall. Tiny homes are usually super efficient, usually 300 to 600 square feet. Basically picture a lot of people around here, their camp trailer or their fifth wheel, and turn it into a permanent home, put some shingles on it. These are roughly 12 to 1,400 square feet, each unit. Not the structure, each unit. We're between 12 and 1,400 square feet, 3-bedroom, 2-bath homes with a party wall.
Okay, and you talked about the adjacent properties. Your proposal is 18 of these twin homes.
No,
But-
9 structures,
9 structures. and
18 units,
Okay,
for a gross density of 7.8 units per acre.
okay, so the adjacent properties you identified, there were 10 units, 12 units, and 17 units. That's different than 18.
But we have more than double the land that those units were put on.
Okay.
So I'm talking about effective gross density of 10 units per acre, 12 units per acre, 7 units per acre are the 3 I identified. Ours is 7.8 units per acre. We have over 12,000 square feet of dedicated open space to the south.
So 7 houses on an acre?
7, I'm sorry, could you rephrase your question?
You said you had 7.8 units on 1 acre of ground?
Per gross acre, because we have 2.3 acres of total dirt.
Okay. You talked about the guiding documents, the comp plan, and that they encourage density. I think that really comes into interpretation. When I signed off on the comp plan, I wasn't trying to encourage density. So can you explain a little bit about?
Well, it's a matter of how you define density. R12 zoning designation, what that means is the R12 zoning says of a density not to exceed 12 units per gross acre. As you can see, we're nearly half that. We're 7/12 of that in our proposal. The comprehensive plan is broken up into sections of town, right? The downtown corridor, different PUDs that have already been approved. If you zero in on the comprehensive plan in this area of town with its proximity to 15th Street, I-90, and how close it is to downtown, it has identified this area as compact neighborhood. And definitionally, and forgive me, I thought all of the documents from the Planning Commission's meeting were going to make it into your packets. I was under the understanding I wasn't to introduce any new information.
Yeah, that's fine.
So, the compact neighborhood designation is what was given to this area, and I'm going to go off of memory here, but it basically talks about when redevelopment occurs here, it's going to encourage this type of product. These become infill opportunities, and the underlying zoning designation will sort of dictate the density, which is R12, not to exceed 12 units per acre. And they see this as, and I know I offended people in the public last time when I say this, these aren't really my words, these are out of the comp plan. They recognize aging neighborhoods that upon redevelopment will likely redevelop more dense than they currently exist. That's the comp plan, that's not my words.
Can you speak a little bit about your community meeting and what some of the concerns were?
The concerns were, you're going to hear a lot of them tonight, that these will all become rentals, crackheads will move in here. My client was lining this up to take that county island that exists right there, extend our street, and continue this land grab to the east as we just burn the earth's surface as we overdensify, sell to the highest bidder, and it's just on and on and on it goes. That it's not the case. You know, my client is a local business owner who employs roughly 200 people. And when he tried to expand his business and hire extra drivers, biggest problem was people wanted to come work for him, but they couldn't afford to live here. And so he saw this opportunity. I think he's going to speak tonight on his behalf. He'll be able to expand on it a little bit more. This was our direct attempt to try to create a product, bring it to the market that, I don't even use the word affordable anymore because I don't know what that means, but entry level, attainable, something far less than what we have at, what was the recent data? 565,000 median home price in our county. So I started rambling and I forgot what your initial question
What some of the concerns were, but you're right.
Yeah. So all of those concerns, right? And they thought, well, this doesn't fit with what we've got going on here. But if you drive, it's like every third house, there is pride of ownership there, and people really do care about it. But 2 out of every 3 houses there, they might be rentals. They are aging. Some of them are quite run down. And there's a lot of stuff out there. They said, you should just put 4 or 5 homes in here. You'll sell them. We guarantee it. And I kept trying to tell them, we're trying to meet 2 objectives here. Yes, my client this is a for-profit venture. But at the same time, we're also trying to bring something to the market that could be owned by somebody that the first number is a 3, not a 5 or a 6. Like, that's what we're shooting for. I can't hone in on what the number will be because we don't even have approval yet, but that's been our goal since 18 months ago, was to bring something to the market that could be owned, that would show pride of ownership, and I just don't think that message ever landed with the property owners. I think they swear that we're going to build these out, sell them to the highest bidder, they'll all become rentals, and it's going to completely deteriorate their quality of life or what they've become used to. Those honestly are the concerns that seem to be overwhelming.
Thank you.
Dan?
And let's see, are you familiar with Habitat for Humanity and their model?
To some degree, yes.
Well, for the record, at one point, I was our local director of Habitat for Humanity, and what you're talking about here reminds me a lot of their current model, which has evolved. When I was with Habitat and a lot of the places you see around town, they built a nice, modest house, but it had, the garage and the property and all of that. And now with the current projects, and if you look at one that was just, it's kind of the backside of the Texas Roadhouse, kind of down around the bend.
I'm familiar
and
with
they
it.
were able to, actually on an old city parcel where we were going to build a well, I think they got about 5 or 6 units in, and it's because the people now, and with affordability, can only buy that common living space. I mean, the rest of it, isn't theirs, it's held in common, and so this, actually, this sounds like an improvement on that. For me, I guess when and I know there's a lot of debate about this, we've been to forums and stuff, and, people on one hand like, oh, don't let it turn into rentals, but on the other hand, rentals and renters are people and stuff, but this is a chance to get into the market, and so it's, but I think it does meet, back to, the comprehensive plan, the fact that, we've got to have a range of opportunities and housing, and you're not going to be able to create that without creating some density. And, I guess for me, when I look at this, I don't see this as high density. It's not your single family, the old fashioned, downtown, but it's, some people aren't going to be able to afford that. But anyway, I appreciate that clarification.
Yeah, we're well under the underlying density that is allowed.
Yeah.
And as I pointed out, with those properties that are inside of 300 feet, when they redeveloped, They went right for max density.
Yeah.
That's what
yeah.
they did.
Well, okay.
And-
Well, and I'll appreciate
Okay.
hearing the whole story from everybody, so thanks.
Thank you for your comments.
Kiki.
Thank you. I just want to be clear on a couple of things. Of the green area that you're showing is all R12s, do you have any idea of how many of the parcels up there are near the size that your parcel is?
It's not a lot. The ones that are there, I don't have an exact number, but I did start to, the exercise became tedious. A lot of them are like churches or municipal type uses. As far as single-family dwellings on 2+ acres, per my
you
first
only-
count, it would probably be single digits.
Okay, but there's a handful of acre and above possibly?
There is.
Okay, and then you'd said that this parcel, the 2.3 that you have, without any concessions really just coming in to build, you could do 16 duplex.
We would have to
That's
subdivide it.
That's 16 units, or is that 8 duplexes?
Structures, 16 units.
16 units. But those would not be able to be purchased by a homeowner.
Well, we were
Be
talking
purchased
about
and then
this
rent-
ahead of time. Back when I was younger, I had a few forward-thinking friends that bought a duplex, lived in half, and rented out the other half as they were sharp cookies. But as of right now, because I also broker commercial real estate on top of doing this and do land use and development stuff, the going rate for multifamily, and that includes duplexes, specifically duplexes in our market, sort of the jumping off point is $350,000 a door. That's what investors, out-of-market investors, are likely willing to pay. And so the average homeowner, or the average younger person looking to do what some of my forward-thinking friends did when I was in my 20s, would basically have to come up, because it's not a typical single-family 30-year fixed-rate mortgage. They would have to come up with 15 or 20% down as an investment property, and then write a note on a $700,000 property. If they were trying to live in half and lease the other half, I don't see that as very likely.
So the investor's going to be the first client for that, if that scenario goes that way. I'm just trying to get a sense for a balance here of how this property is going to develop one way or another.
That is correct.
Something's going to happen. So I'm just trying to get a fair and thorough sense of balance here as to what
16 units for
would likely
duplexes
be
is what we
investment
have.
properties at 750 plus, is what you're saying.
Say that again?
In your estimate, they'd be investment properties starting at 750,000
Per structure.
per structure.
Yeah.
And so that's likely could be some living in there permanently, but rentals for the most part.
I would give it a
That's your
greater
guess.
than 98%
That's what I'm,
chance they'd be rentals.
that's what I'm wondering too. And I'm looking at the most recent report that just came out for the housing availability and affordability study, just came out in September, and I haven't read the entire thing. But what it did do is, from the previous one that came out the end of December of 2022, was that 25% of the people who live here can't afford to buy a home, and it's now dropped to 20% of the people. And what that's based on, when you talk about affordability, is the area median income. And what the group I had been working with looked at people who are making 80 to 120% of the area median income. That's who can't buy a home here now. So we're not talking low-income people or workforce housing. We're talking local workers who can't buy a home here. So I think the $300,000 range is where our local workers have to be. What I'm wondering is, we have development agreements, and is that, I'm looking at you, Hillary, maybe, is that applicable to this PUD agreement? And was there discussion on putting in some of the tools that could put sidebars on assuring that these would be sold and not flipped for profit and turned into rentals in the form of deed restrictions or those kinds of other things? Can you speak to that, or is that at a different point in the hearing? Am I just, I don't know if you've
I'm
talked
willing to
them
speak
about-
to that
Okay.
if we all feel it's prudent and appropriate.
That's great.
It's his time.
Well, it is a question, right, from,
I guess my point is, you're saying one of your mission and one of your goals is to create entry-level housing, but if there's nothing that assures that, then I guess I've been here a lot when I go by and say, somebody says, well, we're going to do this, and 2 years later, I look at a property and go, they did nothing like that. So I'm wondering what is your perception of that conversation?
Well, I've worked with Todd and his team for several years now. Todd is a capitalist. We believe in the free markets. I think organically, he's willing to build this thing out, and if an investor were to come in, this is just when I put my broker hat on, if we're going to buy 4 of these units, you're going to try to negotiate a group rate. The market has a way of working itself out. In addition to that, I think if the conversation, so just to back up a little bit, as long as he sees this thing through, he's going to get the greatest return on his investment by selling these to individual property owners. Investors are going to want discounts. They're going to want to cut commissions. They're going to want to save money where they can. The free market will find a way, if he brings all of these products to market to individual property purchasers, he will yield the greatest return on the project. Furthermore, in knowing Todd, if our approval was conditioned upon meeting with your group or writing something into the covenants that says, properties, no more than 2 of these units could be sold to outside investors, if it were conditioned upon working with a group to bring locals to be able to purchase these, that is a conversation we're more than willing to have. To just deed restrict them right out unless we know what that verbiage looks like. And, you have to read the finer details. The devil's in the details.
Well, there
of
are
these
programs
things.
out there that say that, this property can be, it doesn't need to be, there's different tools that you can use to put some sidebars on this to say this is a property, our intent is to do this, and in our development agreement, we want to, put some conditions that it'll be offered to people who are making between 80 and 120% AMI. That's our local worker target wage. So we're not looking at saying, well, it kind of puts investors in a different category where it could be sold. It wouldn't restrict it, but there could be some things put in the development agreement. And I'm not sure how specific you got into that conversation, but I think that for me, I've always got my eyes on what can this do for helping the city reach its goals of livability for our local workforce. So that's kind of where my question was. And I think I had another question here too. The adjacent abutting lot sizes. The compact neighborhood in the comp plan, is a twin home called out in compact neighborhood description? Or, I can't recall that part.
Yeah, I don't think I do think it is in there. I think townhome, duplex, cottage is all identified in the compact neighborhood.
And really the difference is twin home is real estate, purchasable,
Yes.
connected, and duplexes are not. So that's the difference in that definition. I just didn't know if that definition, both of them were in the compact neighborhood. That's all I have for
Right, and that,
now.
to piggyback off of that point, we've always been a little bit, it doesn't seem to quite make sense that the twin home design is an outright allowed use in the R17, which is a more impactful, more dense zoning designation. However, duplex is allowed in R12. We've always thought that the twin home, due to the fact that it could be home ownership, is a less impactful land use than the duplex, if that makes sense. We've always found that a little bit perplexing, that duplex and multifamily, just the duplex, not the larger unit multifamily, but the duplex is sort of classified starting in R12 and moving up through R17 all the way to R34, whereas the twin home design is not outright allowed use until you get to the R17, and we just have always viewed it as a less intense land use classification, and it should kind of exist in the R12.
And then my last thing was, sorry, I know, I thought I had one more and then I circled. You had a slide up there that had a number of properties that were at a higher number of units per acre. That was, okay, so, but then again, you're in the adjacent versus abutting discussion in this list, is that right?
But the code and my review criteria does not say anything about abutting. It
Okay.
says
Adjacent
property owners, and that was a reason for denial by the planning commission, that it was not cohesive with adjacent properties. And the point I was trying to make here was that would be an accurate statement if you choose to omit these three
Gotcha.
that I point out.
Okay. And they are higher density than yours?
The
on a
one
per
to the
acre level.
south is slightly less, but those are 10 units on 8 lots.
Okay. Thank you.
James, got anything?
Well, I do. Kiki touched on multiple of my questions, so thank you. I'd like to know a little bit more about the affordability of the townhouses, and if you can just expand a little bit more on your thought process and how to ensure that they're affordable. Again, before you answer me, I want to make sure that this is appropriate. And Randy, can I go down this road in these questions?
Yes.
I mean, hypothetically, somebody could buy it for $350,000 and flip it quickly for more.
Theoretically.
Right. What are you doing to help protect that they remain affordable? And what is a little bit more on your plan is what I'd like to hear.
We would be willing to have conversations with PAHA and the other organizations that I've become familiar with. To be 100% honest with you, I've been grinding trying to figure out how to get this thing approved, because I can't even have the thought of how do we maintain affordability when I feel like we've been shot down now twice on this proposal. So in all honesty, we're going to work together, right? So just do a little exercise with me real quick. $900,000 purchase price for the land. The land was marketed at R12, investors, this is what you can do. Put a deal together. We've had holding costs since then. We've got taxes. There's a small note against a portion of the property. So let's move that starting point up to $1 million. We've already calced this out. If we build this road, there's going to be about $500,000 to $700,000 worth of infrastructure to get these shovel-ready lots between engineering, surveying, pulling pipe, roads, sidewalks. We're probably at a starting point of somewhere between 1.6 and 1.8 before we bring a single foundation out of the ground. We've run some numbers on our basic concept, and we're kind of zeroing in on that $130 to $150 per square foot of vertical construction costs. So at $1,200 to $1,400 per unit, you see how it starts to stack up, and then just in my experience, I appreciate Council members Miller's point that somebody could come in here, gobble them up, and turn them into rentals. I do appreciate that. I feel like we could put some guardrails up, and we could work with one of these groups to make sure, because when Todd speaks tonight, you're going to understand he's a local business owner. He doesn't want to see that happen either. You can't totally ensure what the end price is going to be when it hits the market. The market has a way of rejecting pricing that is out of line. We're going to try to find that sweet spot at somewhere around an 8 to 14% return on investment. He's not looking for a huge profit margin on these. And once we've stacked it all up, the new proposal talks about one unit that's slightly smaller with a 1-car garage, one unit that's slightly larger with a 2-car garage. we've kind of toyed with the idea of somewhere in that 335 to 355 for the one car, somewhere in that 360 to 390 for the two car. Just seems to be about where it's landing. I believe that the market would reject anything much higher than that. So there's no guarantee, even if we bring these to market, that he's going to hit the projected profit margin. We're balancing it. It's not easy to do. We're trying.
I appreciate your answer, and I'm only asking because you mentioned it in your presentation about keeping them affordable, so I just wanted to hear more about
No,
that thought
remember I
process.
said I won't use the word affordable
Well-
because I don't even know what that means anymore.
Okay.
But we're trying to hit a target that we think,
Right.
you know, somebody making 65, 70 grand a year could gain entry.
Thank you.
And just to clarify what I was talking about with some of the programs that are available, they don't target a number that's a sales price for the property, and they don't target an income level. What they target are an area median income percentage, and that area median income changes. So, you know, currently it would be, I don't want to repeat the number because I just skimmed it the other day, but it's $90,000 a year that these people are making that need to be able to afford to live here. So that's the thing, the price isn't something that those programs lock a developer into selling the property for that, or the person applying for it, it fluctuates with what the AMI is. So that's kind of how those sideboards work on that deed restriction and some of those trust programs.
Well, I feel enlightened. I do appreciate your perspective. I guess my only question was somewhat along the lines where they took it on rentals, you know, or how do you guarantee it's not going to be a rental? You really can't, right?
You can. You could write it into the CCNRs. I talked with Linda Wilhelm once about that, and she believes there's certainly a way to do it within the CCNRs if somebody was fully committed to making sure, perhaps with an agreement with one of these housing authorities working locally. But like I mentioned, it's hard for us to have those discussions when we're still not even anywhere at an approval yet. If there were some condition that could be based on our approval, that we at least entertain those ideas, I believe we'd be open to that.
So Randy and Hillary, how in this particular hearing process can we get to that discussion? I had mentioned where we went with developer agreement discussions before, and would we wait till the staff presentation and then come back so that we can get further into that part of the conversation if it's deemed that that's something we want to hear about?
Yes, I think procedurally, you need to go through the whole public hearing. So staff presents, and then the public testifies. And then the code on development agreements suggests that the planning commission can require it. Doesn't say anything about city council, but since this is an appeal and you can affirm with conditions, you could condition the approval on the development agreement, which would come back to council for ultimate approval.
And sorry, I'm still talking.
Yeah.
But the development agreement then could outline what organizations or steps or restrictions the developer was willing to put in there, as well as what the CCNRs might look like, and can it get into that much detail that the developer and the would it be the planning department that would go through that process to create the development agreement?
Typically, planning department works with legal and the developer to come up with a development agreement. Of course, the more specific you get, the more likely you're going to have to modify it at some point, which requires an additional hearing. So you don't want to get too specific,
Correct.
but you can put guardrails up.
Okay, I just wanted to see the steps where that would go and how it would come back to council if we go down that road, so thank you.
And I don't
Other
think we
questions
should
for
go
Jeremy?
further until we need to get to the public hearing
Getting-
part with the public.
Well, she needed to get it off her chest, you know. It's okay. Jeremy, thank you.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate it. All right, staff. Tammy's coming up and gonna give us the facts and the project overview.
Good evening, council members. So I'll try to make this as brief as possible since you got an introduction from Randy and a little background from Jeremy. So I'll skip some of this. So applicant owner Todd Kaufman, Jeremy Trezulli just spoke, and he is with Olson Engineering. This is the area map, and this is the boundary of the city limits. This is an aerial photo of the subject property outlined in the red. To the north here would be Nettleton Gulch Road. This is 17th Street, Steiner, and Gilbert to the south. And this is an aerial view, also bird's eye view of it, Nettleton Gulch here. And you can see Gilbert, Steiner, and 17th Street. So currently, there's an existing single family on this property and an outbuilding that will be removed. It is 2.3 acres, and there are some trees on the property here along the boundary. So this legal notice was published in the press on September 16th, 2023. So there are two decisions tonight. Olson Engineering, on behalf of Todd Kaufman, is requesting approval of the twin home plan unit development and an 18-lot preliminary plat known as Kaufman Estates PUD. So I'm going to give you a bit of an overview. I know Jeremy touched on it a bit. So they're asking for 18 twin homes, and as he mentioned, a twin home, a definition of a twin home is defined as two single-family homes. They share a wall, but they have separate owners. The lot line of the twin home splits the property and creates two separate properties. So with this PUD request, the applicant is asking for lots fronting on a private street rather than the public street. This would be his private road. Twin home construction. Twin homes would not be allowed in the R12 zone, only in the R12 zone. So duplex and a single family are the only two uses as far as residences allowed.
Can you say that again? That was a little confusing.
Sure. The R12 zoning district allows for duplexes and single-family homes. So by right, a twin home would not be allowed. That's why they've asked for the plan unit development process to allow for this.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So they've asked for the private street. They've asked for sidewalk on one side. As Jeremy mentioned, they're asking for that property line to run down the center, so a zero lot line. With this proposal, and I'll get into it more on a few other slides, they're providing 22 parking stalls along the south side, and they're providing the 10% open space that is required with the PUD, and in this case, they're providing 12%. So I've gone through some of these. 30-foot lot frontage for each twin home, touched on the sidewalk. You heard about the setbacks, the 0 and 5, and then the separation between the units. And then the minimum lot area is going to be 2663 approximately, rather than 3,500 square feet per unit that we would require for a duplex in the R12 zone. These are the items that they've requested as deviations through this plan unit development process. So this item came to the Planning Commission originally on August 9th, 2022. The proposal at that time was for 24 twin home units on this 2.3 acre parcel, and they proposed 2 open space tracts. This request was unanimously denied. On February 10th, the developer, Jeremy Trezulli and Todd Kaufman, met with several of the neighbors. They discussed the project. The neighbors shared concerns about the density, compatibility, and their hope that single-family homes would be built on the parcel. Jeremy and Todd explained that they wanted to do the twin homes, sell them individually. Then on August 8th, the Planning Commission heard the request and new proposal for this PUD and preliminary plat. And on this request, there were 18 twin homes proposed on the 2.3 acre parcel. The request included the 12,000 square feet of open space, which in this case would be open to the public, and the 22 parking spaces that I had shown you briefly on the south side of the private street for parking. The applicant's appeal, dated on August 23, 2023, is contending that the Planning Commission abused its discretion because of bias in favor of members of the public who are opposed to the application. In addition, the applicant contends that the Planning Commission manipulated the term adjacent erroneously and applied the term to this application. And there are a number of findings that you'll need to make on this proposed PUD and preliminary plat request. Finding B8A, that the proposal is or is not in conformance with the 2042 Comprehensive Plan land use map. So that property is located approximately here. And it is outlined in red in this area. It is noted as compact neighborhood. And your staff report includes the key characteristics for the compact neighborhood. And as far as compatible zoning, R12, R17, MH8, neighborhood commercial, and community commercial. And the question came up just previously about allowing different types of housing in this compatible neighborhood, compact neighborhood. And it notes single-family, duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, townhomes, green courts, and auto courts are also allowed, could be part of a compact neighborhood place type. So I've included the existing and planned bicycle network, the existing planned walking network, and existing transit network maps in your staff report. And this is the approximate area of the subject property. So there are a few comprehensive plan goals and policies that I have included in your staff report. So under community and identity, there are a few. Growth and development, I've included a few. And jobs and economy. Finding B8B, the design and planning of the site is or is not compatible with the location, setting, and existing uses on the adjacent properties. So I've provided this in your staff report just to give you an idea of some nearby properties, and this is, I'm also going to show the land use map, but this kind of calls out what's there. So this is the outline of the subject property, and these are all single-family homes. And I just got on GIS, this was noted as a duplex, and a couple more duplexes here. And then this is the pocket housing project. This was done in approximately 2014. And since we've repealed the pocket housing development regulations. So this is Nettleton Gulch Road here, 15th Street, and Gilbert here. And then this is the boundary of the property. So I've just included that section just to give you an idea of the surrounding uses.
Can I ask a quick question? Just really quick right here. Are the white lines the actual estimated property lines on these?
They are.
That's right.
So I took some site photos. This is from 17th Street looking at the subject property, and it does taper from the center of the property down a little bit towards 17th Street. And this is the center of the subject property. This is looking east. This is the existing single family that's there, and the adjacent outbuilding. And this is a view from the subject property. This is looking north at one of the neighboring properties. And this is from the center of the property. This is looking down towards 17th Street and Steiner. And this is from the western edge of the subject property, and this is looking west towards Steiner. And then this is along 17th Street looking south. As you can see, this is gravel. Your staff report includes some information about some improvements that would need to be done on the property. And to the west is the subject property. And this is from 17th Street. This is looking north toward Nettleton Gulch Road. So if you came out of the property here, if you went north, you would meet up with Nettleton Gulch Road there. This is the zoning map. The property is currently zoned R12, as I've mentioned. And the surrounding properties here in this green are also R12. This is an R8 PUD, C17, and this is an R3. And then this is also a PUD. So back to the land use map, and I showed you the GIS map with the duplexes and different uses on it. This shows that the yellow single-family uses, brown, are the duplexes, a few of them that I pointed out, and there's some more further north and south. And then this is the pocket housing project that I pointed out on my GIS map. So this would be the layout and the building footprint. So they have proposed to have the two townhome or twin home units. And as Jeremy mentioned, one would be smaller than the other, having a single-car garage. The other would have a two-car garage. They haven't asked for a deviation on parking, so they are required for each unit to provide 2 parking spaces. In addition, and based on some of the outcome and discussion from one of the public hearings, they did provide some parallel parking on the south side of this private road. They, again, in the PUD, they have requested for a deviation just to provide one sidewalk on the north side, and they're going to provide their stormwater and, I believe, push their snow, locate their snow in this area during the winter months. And as I mentioned, this is going to be a single-car unit. This would be a 2-car unit, and they would also use their driveway for that second parking stall that's required per code. And this is the upper floor plan. This is an example of the anticipated architecture, and that's the front view. And as I mentioned, the property line would go right down the middle of these, and they would be individually owned as a twin home. This is a rear view of the twin home, and a side view, and another side view. So the proposal is or is not compatible with the natural features of the site and adjoining properties. So as I mentioned, this property does taper just a bit down from the center of the property down to 17th Street. It's got a slight elevation change. There are large trees along the perimeter. Some of them have been removed, and it's relatively flat with some vegetation on it. There's a single-family home on the lot with a few outbuildings, and the natural features of the site are consistent with the natural features of the surrounding properties to the east, including residential housing on larger parcels to the north, east, south of the subject property, and the neighborhood immediately west, including the northwest and the southwest, includes a mix of single-family homes, duplexes, pocket housing, infill with smaller lots. And the properties to the north, south, and east are larger lots. Finding B8D that the location, design, and size of the proposal are not such that the development will or will not be adequately served by the existing public facilities and services. So your staff report does include all the comments from city staff, and city staff indicated that there are adequate public services and facilities available. However, city staff has recommended conditions that must be met in order to meet this requirement. And in the staff report, there are 20 conditions with this proposed request. Finding B8E that the proposal does or does not provide adequate private common open space as determined by the commission, no less than 10% of gross land free of buildings, streets, driveways, or parking areas, and the common open space shall be accessible to all users of the development and usable for open space and recreational purposes. So the applicant has proposed 12% open space that would be provided for the residents of Kaufman Estates, and it is going to be open to the public. The open space area does include a grassy area, trees, shrubs, walking path, gazebo, picnic area. And so this is a graphic showing the proposed open space here, and this would be on the south side of this private road. And this would be a fire department turnaround that is required. And this again shows the open space with the gazebo, walking path, little picnic area, some shrubs, and so on. And that's the example of a gazebo they may put in. Finding B8F, the off-street parking does or does not provide parking sufficient for users of the development. So there was no request to change the off-street parking requirements. And as I mentioned, there are 22 parking stalls that have been proposed on the south side of the street for the residents. Finding B8G that the proposal does or does not provide acceptable method for the perpetual maintenance of all common properties. So the open space areas would be maintained by the HOA and open to the public, and legal department would review those documents prior to the approval of the final PUD. And we have some subdivision findings for this proposal. Finding B7A that all the general preliminary plat requirements have or have not been met as attested to by the city engineer. And the city engineer indicated the preliminary plat submitted contains all the general preliminary plat elements required by the code. And then there were deviations proposed through the PUD process, and they are included in the staff report. And once again, this is a preliminary plat for Kaufman Estates. This would be how the buildings would be laid out with the property line running down the middle. They are proposing the 20-foot setback, the typical setback on the front, and 25-foot setback, which is typically required in the R12 zone. Finding B7B, that the provisions for sidewalks, streets, alleys, rights-of-way easements, street lighting, fire protection, planting, drainage, pedestrian and bicycle facilities, and utilities are or not adequate. So city staff has indicated that there are adequate public services and facilities available, and the staff report does include on pages 30 through 34 additional comments. There will be some improvements on 17th Street that will need to be made if this is approved. It would be widened to, I believe, a 25-foot right-of-way just in front of the proposed property, and the other areas would still remain a little more narrow because it's existing. And this is the street section that they're proposing, which would be the private street that I had shown you on the proposed preliminary plat, and then the street sections on 17th Street. Finding B7C, that the proposed preliminary plat does or does not comply with all of the subdivision design standards and all of the subdivision improvement standards contained in Chapter 16.40 requirements. So per the engineering review, for the purpose of the preliminary plat, both subdivision design standards and improvement standards have been vetted for compliance, and that's per Chris Bosley, our city engineer. The City Council may, as a condition of approval, establish reasonable requirements to mitigate any impacts that would adversely affect the surrounding neighborhood. And as I mentioned, there are 20 conditions tied to this requested PUD and preliminary plat. And then Randy covered some of the information as far as action alternatives. So the City Council must consider this request and make appropriate findings to approve with additional conditions, refer back to the Planning Commission, deny without prejudice. And that concludes my staff report. Any questions for me?
I have one.
Okay.
Or maybe two. Private street, they're going to plow their own snow, they're going to sweep, they're going to prune, they're going to, yes,
They are.
they're going to maintain the stormwater on private property.
That's what Jeremy had mentioned in the previous hearings, yes. And that would, on the maintenance, as far as the HOA or CCNR information that staff would get, that information would be included.
Parking, 22 places on the street, and then there's combinations of twos and ones in the housing. Our minimum parking right now for a two-bedroom, one-bath apartment is 2?
2 stalls per unit.
So in this case, if he has 3-bedroom, 2-bath, he needs
He still would only need to provide 2.
2 places.
Correct.
Okay.
For a single-family dwelling, or single-family parking requirements are 2 per unit.
Okay, so the garage covers it, the double garage.
On one, the garage covers it because it's a 2-car garage. On the smaller unit, he's got the garage and then the driveway, and that would be providing the required parking.
The driveway counts.
Correct.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Anybody? Oh, Mr. Gookin has a question.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, and apparently the lawn counts too in this city. So these are all substandard lot sizes, right?
Correct.
Okay, and that would not be allowed outside of a PUD, but that's
That is
why we have a
correct.
PUD. Is there anywhere else in the city where we have these split homes, these, whatever you call them?
I believe there is a project off of Atlas Road that they did, twin homes.
Okay, all right, so it's not unique.
Yeah, on the south side of Prairie along Atlas Road.
And the pocket housing that you mentioned, we killed that off, and that would be non-conforming today, right?
Legal non-conforming, yes.
Legal non-conforming. It was interesting that you mentioned that about the applicant's appeal, and in it, whack, he says, the discretion used by the Planning Commission was biased toward members of the public that were opposed to the request. Randy, why do we have people testify if you can say there's a bias?
You can say anything. Bias has a specific meaning you have a prejudgment in favor or against. So that's an allegation by the appellant.
But we can listen to the public and base our decision on them, right?
Yes, you can.
Okey dokey. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Tammy?
Can we reserve the right to ask questions later
Yes.
of staff? Can we come back after
Oh.
hearing public testimony?
Yes.
Yes, because staff is not taking a position, they're just providing information.
Thank you.
All right, thanks so much, Tammy.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. You guys good for another push?
Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to now open up public comments and ask it in respect to time. Please do not restate what has already been stated. Rather, confirm you agree with prior testimony in opposition or in support. And we'll make it about 3 minutes. There's about 34 people up here, but I noticed once I started looking, there's just a handful of you, 6 or 9 of you, that actually want to get up and speak. And it sounds like you guys have done this before. We appreciate it. So with that, we will open public testimony. So I'm just going to kind of go down the line. If I can read your last name, please forgive me. So Tom Hungerford wants to testify and is against. Still coming? Okay. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you. Is it possible, I have some stuff that I wasn't able
Gotcha.
to put anything up on the screen, so
You bet.
is it possible that? So, one of them, I have one for everybody, and then I have a map that kind of shows the lot sizes and
All right.
stuff that I'll use as examples.
Perfect, thank you.
Oh, this is in there, yeah.
Share the map.
Thank you. Tom, can you do about 3 minutes? Would that be good for you?
I think I can keep it real close to
You're
that.
awesome. Thank
Yeah,
you.
I will try my best, and thank you, council members, I appreciate the time. Am I good then? All right. So first off, thank you. I want to address a couple things that Jeremy said, just real quick. Like, one of them is I want to just talk about his costs that he said as far as building. Just from the numbers he gave, he'd be looking at $352,000 in cost just to build a 2,000 square foot based on $132 a foot to build. Also addressing the aging neighborhood. We choose this neighborhood. There's young families, there's old families. This is a neighborhood that we choose.
Would you be able to speak up a little bit more?
Yeah, you bet. I
Okay,
apologize. Yeah, so anyway, I just want to state that. Also, one thing that I do want to talk about, because he talks about adjacent, but I want to talk about one of the most important factors here is compatibility. The Planning Commission's findings on this was based also on compatibility. This is not compatible. Findings B8B, the design and planning of the site is not compatible with the location, setting, and existing uses on adjacent properties. It's surrounded by 14 properties. The average lot size is 0.68 acres, all single-family homes. The description says large lots, single-family dwellings to the north, east, and west. It also is to the south. Near the project site are examples of pocket housing, duplexes, and other infill projects. Adjacent was discussed a lot last time. The one thing I want to say about that, yes, there is an adjacent property over on Gilbert. It is a pocket housing style project. This should not apply because pocket style housing is no longer allowed in Coeur d'Alene. Now, of the adjacent properties that he speaks of, and that's what the one map shows, there are 35 other properties. They total almost 20 acres. The two projects that he refers to are 2.2 acres total. And I used the broad brush like he did on that adjacent as well, but they are large lots that surround this property. One of the things I wanted to talk about also is twin homes. Basically, it's the same as pocket housing or cookie cutter housing. And this is apparent in his own design, which I have a picture of right there. This is really nothing different than putting a different dress on the same doll. This would be like an example that we're all aware of is over on Lunsford. There's a project that went over there. This is going to be a 627-foot two-story wall that will go in 14 residents' backyards. I sent an email with a lot more information, and I apologize, I'm not going to be able to cover near of it, as much of it. We do and are willing to sit down and talk to him about compatible solutions. One of the things that we had talked about was 5 or 6 homes, single-level homes. They would be on 0.2 acre lots. One of our concerns also is safety, the street safety for kids. We were fortunate enough to have Chris Bosley from the street department that came over and he met with us, and he was fantastic answering questions, and we voiced our concerns. There's other people that are going to be talking on that as well. We're not against growth. We really aren't. We understand it's necessary, but we want it to be done responsibly, and we're asking him to do that for us. This is not compatible. This does not fit our neighborhood. That map right there shows it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom. Amber wishes to testify. Amber Hicks. And then Shannon Sardell is next. Welcome,
Good
Amber.
evening. I'm Amber Hicks. I am adjacent to the property in question. I live on Gilbert. I just wanted to say that I agree 100% with everything that Mr. Hungerford just shared, so I will try my best not to repeat that. I will be the person primarily speaking on safety concerns. I have a son, a young son, as do many of my neighbors, in the homes that surround the intersection at Gilbert and 17th. Just within 2 houses of that intersection, in either direction, we've got at least 10 children under the age of 10 years old who live there. My concern comes from the fact that 17th Street is really not a street, it is an alley. As Tom mentioned, we had Chris Bosley, the city engineer, graciously meet us and walk the streets with us, and he confirmed that our street, where it meets Gilbert, at just 20 feet from curb to curb, is extremely narrow, and we don't build streets like that in Coeur d'Alene anymore. It is small. This is an older neighborhood that's been there for decades. This proposal requires the owner to pave this dirt alley from Steiner to Gilbert through that section I just mentioned, which is the widest part of 17th Street at 20 feet, just to clarify. It will take away the right for the existing homeowners on 17th Street to park in front of their own homes, which I do not agree with and I don't think is right. So they won't be allowed to park there anymore. They'll have to move their cars over to somewhere like Gilbert in front of my home because the road is too narrow. It's also too narrow to add sidewalks. It's not an option. Our neighborhood is very pedestrian friendly. In fact, while we stood out there for over an hour meeting with Chris, it was all pedestrians, dog walkers, and cyclists with 2 cars who entered that street. So a lot of people cut over from Nettleton to the Best Ave community via this street. That's how we found our house that we ended up purchasing. This increase in traffic, so you're taking a single family residence that had 0 to 1 car leaving it with the elderly male that lived there before, and we're proposing 18 units, 2 to 3 bedroom units that will realistically bring 2 to 3 cars with it per unit, even on days where they don't have guests visiting. So if you do the math, you got 36 or more vehicles funneling out onto this alley that then runs into dead-end streets and that need to connect back out to 15th Street through this intersection that is unregulated by stop signs or yield signs where our children play. That is a problem, and I want to know that if you approve to vote to approve this development, then what are you, the city, and you, the developers, going to do to address these safety concerns for our children, just simply from this influx in traffic? We are not anti-development. We are not anti-twin homes. We are not anti-Mr. Kaufman. We're just humbly asking you to enforce sustainable, safe growth for our neighborhood and to not send 30-plus vehicles through our narrow streets where our kids play. That is why we had requested, 6 single-family homes to match the surrounding areas Mr. Hungerford mentioned. So thank you for your time and for letting
Thanks,
us.
Amber. Shannon, you're on deck, and then Elsie's behind that. Amy Bartu is against the process and does not wish to testify.
Good evening, council members. I live at 1806 East Nettleton Gulch Road with my family of 4. We are on the south side of our property. Will be directly abutting this property, so we don't need to split words about adjacent or how far away my property line meets this north property line. My family moved into this neighborhood a little over a year ago after I took a job with the Idaho Heritage Trust. We felt fortunate to have found a house in this neighborhood. We were looking for a single-family house with easy access to Canfield and Concourse, personal backyard, open space, and a neighborhood of families to give our kids the ability to play safely and explore the surroundings independent of us boring adults. We were really fortunate to have found it, but this is a community that we've moved into where people talk to each other, they look each other in the eye, they respect each other. There are many families with children, as our former speaker just said, and we do appreciate the older style of home in this area. There is the addressing that this is an aging community, but I would say that there are lots of young families in this community, that the age of the building stock may be older, but it's because these young families have energy and want to fix things up and make the yards better and make a better living environment for their kids. I'd just like to say that we're not here to make, we're not here as investors. We are homeowners. This is not something that we hope to make money off of. We want to make this place our home, and we've done so, and we've brought our kids to it, and we enjoy the environment. So, you know, all these numbers and all these other things aside, the community that we live in, this is something that's very different from what we have asked. I don't expect that there will never be development on the property next to us, but what they are proposing doesn't fit with the neighborhood. It doesn't fit with the safety requirements or needs of the neighborhood, and we just would like that to be considered as part of the characteristics as they are presented. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Shannon. Elsie Bell. Hi, Elsie.
Hi. I'm 17. Well, I will be in 23 days, actually. And my brother will be, yes, I'm counting down. But my brother will be 13 in 25 days, I think. Our birthdays are really close. They're right before Halloween. And I live with my mom, who just spoke. We moved here a year ago, and I have met the neighbors across the street from us. They're super sweet. They have a kid who I think is 11 and 5. They've got 2 kids. But we're not an old neighborhood. I'm sure there's some older people, but they love the neighborhood and they appreciate the children who live there too. I've talked to several of them. They're all super nice and they're all kind. So, yeah.
Thank you. Tristan Bell is against and does not wish to testify. Tom Renner is against and does not wish to testify. Tom Burke, you're up. Tom? Or maybe it's not Burke, sorry. I told you, last name's
Ruby.
B-Rube.
Thank you, council members.
Thank you, Tom.
Tom Ruby. I don't live very close to this development, but I'm up here. You see me before earlier this year with the Coeur development. We're running into the same kind of problems, and you see we're filling the same rooms, you know, because of all this. It seems that the developers, they focus in on that one paragraph in the comp plan, right? That this inclusive, low income, workforce housing, and everyone's trying to do that, and all these developers are trying to put as much as they can and as little as they can, and they're changing this city. And I've read something earlier that this council in the last 2 years has said yes to like 98% of everything that's come to you. It's like a rubber stamp. I want my fellow neighbors here to know that in November, there's a vote coming up for 3 of the seats, and we should all be united and vote how we feel. So, thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Clark Albitron. Clark? You didn't fall asleep, did you, Clark? Albitron?
Thank you.
All right, moving on. Get to the big list. So I'm just going to kind of tell the people who don't want to testify if they're for it or against it, and then I'll ask you to come up and speak for those. Jane Hungerfield Ford is in opposition. Carol Flagel is in opposition. Ken and Marcia Pina are in opposition. Keith Clemens is in opposition. Kyle Holmes would like to testify. Welcome, Kyle.
Thank you. Good evening, council members. My name is Kyle Holmes. I'm a born and raised Coeur d'Alene native, 38 years, 18-year Navy combat veteran, and I live right at the intersection that's being discussed at 17th and Gilbert. I personally have put over $40,000 into the renovation of my home. It was completely renovated inside out prior to my purchase. Key concern, piggybacking off of what Amber stated on safety, what's not been discussed yet is the bus stop that's on Nettleton Gulch and 17th, and the majority of the kids that live on my side of the street have to walk that alleyway to get there. So if we are going to be increasing the traffic by volumes and not having ability to put in sidewalks, not having the ability to increase safety for the kids, that would be an issue, especially as it narrows significantly towards the end. One of the things that they've been discussing is that they can't put their thumb on specifically is what is affordable housing. With the median income reported at kcgov.us of Kootenai County at $65,000 per the most recent information, the average home price, as everyone has stated, and the average level of income percentage that you should spend on your mortgage at the price that they are stating with a 20% down, if somebody actually had that, at a $350,000 price tag, you're looking at 43% of your income instead of a 28% or less that is recommended going to your home. The reality of that is that $350,000 is not anywhere near the $550,000, or as reported by Krem yesterday at $650,000. So putting it at $550,000 is 72% of the average person in Kootenai County's income going to a mortgage. So right out the gate, we are discounting anybody who's in the $100,000 level and down $65,000 at the actual median level. The cherry picking of information has been beautiful. I appreciate their use of information has been noticed in that was previously stated there's 20 plus acres of houses. What has rarely been shown in all of this is the east side of the properties. It seems the east property line and over towards all the housing is what is being focused on, when there's still a whole entire half of property that focuses to the right side of that severely has been understated, that is included in the adjacent, by their description, narrative. And so with that, the street, which I'm hoping will be talked about further in its development, my house, stated earlier, is on the corner. All of the snow that comes down melts. My driveway floods regularly. So to develop that road, the alleyway road, would be a significant need. Everything, the pedestrian availability that they stated meets inside that development does not meet outside that development. So if they're all planning on walking inside, wonderful, but if they want to leave that property, there is no access. Thank you.
Thanks, Kyle. Jody Johns. Jody Johns, wish to testify? Thanks, Jody.
Thank you, City Council.
Cody, sorry.
Cody Johns, you got it close. I'm the owner of a 9-acre parcel abutting the northern boundary. 1 year ago, my wife and I commented on a similar proposal. Instead of 5 units on my back fence, now there's just 4 being proposed. While this shows lower density, which I suspect has more to do with the engineer being able to pencil in the property rather than the developer listening to the community, I do have similar concerns. The proposal is not compatible with our neighborhood in terms of structure type or lot size. We enjoy our large lot sizes and single-family homes with mature trees. This proposal is a drastic change overnight. Last time we heard a lot about affordable housing, but in talking with the city staff, I understand there's no ability to control that. These units clash already. I see the potential for investors to acquire as short or long-term rentals. Again, I'm told by the city that rentals can't be controlled or mitigated. This is a big risk. And as Kaufman said in one of his sit-down meetings with the neighbors, he'll sell to whoever buys, and that's a direct quote. I expect increased noise, traffic, lighting, impact on neighbors. That will affect our quality of life. In the PUD process, if the PUD process is supposed to allow flexibility in the code to get a better design or more open space, I don't see the value in this trade-off. We ask that the property be developed to match the density of the R12 zoning that is already allowed, or that the developer pursue single-family homes with larger lots that will be profitable and compatible. If the proposal passes, we ask that the developer be tasked with meeting with the community to mitigate all the negative impacts from this development. And just in addition to piggyback off of the Kaufman's engineer team, he did state on one of his maps, it showed the R12 proposal, and he did also say with accommodations with that. So I'm not convinced that map was true to what R12 could potentially be. Thank you.
Thanks, Cody. So Marilyn and Conrad do not wish to testify and are against it. Shelley and Mike Berger are against it, do not wish to testify. Rick Ranbolt would like to testify. Thank you, Rick.
Hello, my name is Rick Ramble. I'm abut the eastern property line of Kaufman Estates there. Wife and I went to both the planning and zoning meetings, opposed this. They unanimously declined twice. They've heard all the comments from the people. I was in opposition to it. I won't hammer on 17th Street much more, other than that they are providing 76 parking spaces in there and say it's not going to affect traffic on that alley. I find that hard to believe. Anyway, my biggest concern, like everybody else, is the density. It just doesn't fit the neighborhood. They're looking at putting 18 families on a place where 2 people have lived for the last last couple decades, anyway. I was read through all the stuff on the computer today, and Mr. Kaufman or Jerry, whichever, stated that the neighborhood is mostly aging homes on quarter-acre lots, although some on larger parcels. There's 13 properties that actually abut him, counting the one that only has a corner. Only 2 of those are quarter-acre lots or so. The rest of them are closer to half to 1-acre lots. You can see my lot with the 2 big white squares. That is 1 acre. Behind me is 1 acre. To my east is 1 acre. To the north of that. Anyway, they're all big lots around there, and they want to put a row of 12 duplexes right down the middle of what looks like country out there. And this, a lot's been said about adjacent and abutment and stuff. So abutment's easy. The property lines are the same. But you had up there earlier a picture like that showed the duplex on Gilbert, one on the north side of Nettleton where's pocket housing or whatever, and then the mini homes that they don't let you build anymore off of 17th, which actually those homes don't, their driveway doesn't come onto 17th, it goes to Gilbert, so no cars come out of that there. But the thing is, the city's example of adjacent says, oh, their example is commercial property across the street from residential. He's not across the, he doesn't have border on Nettleton or Gilbert, only there. And how do you measure the nearest highway and use that? Oh, that's 300 feet wide, so I'll draw a circle on my map and call it adjacent. I don't think that flies. And he mentioned comments from people that were outside of, that weren't adjacent. I don't know where he drew that line. There's a lot of people from the Gulch. Their opinion counts too. You don't have to live next door. Anyway, I think the planning and zoning got it right, and I hope that you guys deny this request.
Thanks, Rick.
Yep.
Patty Rainbolt. is against and does not wish to testify. Adam Hicks is against and does not wish to testify. Deanne Clifton does not wish to testify and is against. Carol DeWalt is in opposition and does not wish to testify. Todd Kaufman would like to testify. Welcome, Todd.
Thank you. How you doing, council members? Just want to let you guys know that I feel like we've gone back to the drawing board for this, and we've lowered the density. I mean, and what we've done is taken something that it ends up lowering. Every time you lower the density, it raises the cost of your lots, right? I mean, when I bought this, it was a house built in 1943. Says it's 2.3 acres, zoned R12 in the center of Coeur d'Alene. I'm thinking, let's build something. I do have a bunch of employees. I have 2 boys. The one's living in Post Falls. You know, I'd like to move him into Coeur d'Alene closer to where I live, and have lived since I went to Lakes in 7th grade. I mean, I've been here my whole life. I do have a bunch of employees that can't find housing. So every time I keep changing density on this, it keeps getting more expensive. I mean, just going from the 24 to the 18, it raised the price $22,000 a door. Significant cost that I'm gonna have to recoup, or you're not selling them. But I mean, this is 9 twin homes, which the twin home is exactly the same as a duplex, other than you can sell off each side. It's the same. We've met all of the criteria that the city's given their blessing. Part of the reason this PUD was because the street department didn't want to see a street in there. What they said, if you put 8 duplexes in there instead of 9 twin homes, and you make that a city street, it'll be the very last one to get plowed. That was their words. So if it's the last street to get plowed, who's going to be calling and complaining to the city that they pay taxes, they have a city street that we built to city standards per their city code, and now all those people are complaining because they don't get their street. So we punted. We're like, okay, well, how do we change this? Build our own private street that we maintain internally instead of taxing the city's snow plows. You saw where their city street department's getting the upgraded for their office. I mean, it was the same. I know where they're at. I deal with the city guys all the time in work. But we've thought this through well, and we've backed off on the density, trying to meet some of the concerns with the neighbors. I get it. It's not in my backyard, and I've dealt with this before, but I'm not some developer that just moved in here from California that's moving out and buying up the prairie and, you know, putting tiny houses in there. I want to be able to do something that I can sell and offer it to my employees, and something that's a reasonable price. I've gone way above and beyond on the parking to make sure that, you know, it is only 20 feet wide. And if they're parking on the street now, then it's only one single lane. It doesn't make sense to me that they can park on 17th Street now. But we wouldn't be putting any additional parking on any city streets. Reading about the compact neighborhoods, that shows the R17 fits into that compact neighborhood, which is also twin homes. So as well as R12 does, it fits into that compact neighborhoods. So I appreciate it.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Todd. Brody Kaufman would not want to testify as in favor. Denise Dreifer would like to testify is in favor. Denise. Oh boy, you're over my.
Must be Derek.
No way.
Derek. Oh, Darren.
Thank you.
Oh,
City
we went to
council
different
members.
schools. I'm sorry, Derek.
Hey, no
Go
problem,
ahead.
no problem.
Go ahead.
Hey, I appreciate your guys' time tonight. You guys are in a tough seat, right? It's balancing everything. All these people have great concerns, and they're very passionate about their neighborhood, which makes sense. But it's tough. I'm a renter right now. I work for Coeur d'Alene Paving. I get paid the wage that we're talking about, and this is about what I'm going to be able to qualify for. And the great thing about a twin home, and it should be promoted way more in our community, is that banks will finance it. Banks don't like financing condos. There's a bunch of stuff that makes it hard to finance a condo. It's
they finance twin homes just like single-family homes. So it makes it attainable to go get a traditional mortgage, get a 30-year fixed rate at your 5% down, and be able to buy these things. And so, to me, it's super important that we look at these types of products. And I was super excited that our company was going to do this because I thought, hey, I'm finally going to be a homeowner here. Here we go. And just the delay after delay after delay it's been hard. My family's dealt with it. It's like, we're going to do this. It's going to be great. We're going to be homeowners now. But, you know, if not, they turn into duplexes and they will be rentals. And maybe I'll be renting one of them, but I'll still be a renter. And these guys are going to get exactly what they don't want, which is 16 rentals in their backyard. That's what they've said the last 2 hearings is they absolutely do not rentals. Well, at least a twin home gives a fighting chance of having some pride and ownership and being able to buy it conventionally and having somebody that cares there instead of just people chancing it coming and going all the time. So I get their concern about duplexes. But unfortunately, that's the buy right that they can do here is duplexes. And it's the only option if we can't get to an agreement tonight on twin homes. So I really hope that you entertain the idea of approving this because it does make sense. It's below density that's allowed in the R12. It's a nice product that would fit my need, and I would love to buy it. So I appreciate your guys' concern, and have a good night.
Thanks, you. Dylan Kaufman would not like to testify as in favor. Jeffrey Coulter would like to testify in his opposition. Jeffrey? Thanks, Jeffrey.
You bet. Thank you for seeing us, council members. I'm going to cut this up quite a little bit because of things that have been said. I think why we're at loggerheads here basically is that, you know, it's a compatibility issue. They keep bringing up this thing on Hat Trick Lane, which is off of Nettleton, as being adjacent, compatible, you know, similar, whatever word you want to use. That thing should never have been built. We had when the Ryans passed away, that property came up for sale, and that development was built by Mort, and it never should have been put there because it's incompatible. It's ugly, you know, and it's brought a character to our neighborhood that wasn't there prior. You have to look at things like this. I know that's why the people are so upset. You know, I live on up the gulch. My wife Kathy and I agree with the findings of the Planning Commission. As this project stands, you know, I don't doubt that something's going to be built, but the way this project looks with the condition of 17th Street and all the other things that people have mentioned, in addition to that, we haven't really talked about mitigating stormwater. Tammy stated that there's a slight elevation change on this property. That's not exactly true if you go down to the property. It's, you know, if you measured that elevation change, it's going to be affected quite a bit by stormwater runoff. I don't know how they're going to mitigate that. I served on the Aquifer Board. I understand what kind of character our neighborhood has. We're in the floodway. We're in the, over the aquifer, and the floodway goes down to the Best Hill Ranch, I think is what that's called, and there's a pond there. And then the floodway from there goes down 15th Street. We don't know what's going to happen in the future. We don't know about what Mother Nature is going to deal with. We don't know what's coming up the gulch or going down in the future. So we have to consider the fact that this water has to go someplace. This runoff has to go someplace. I don't see a lot of places in this plan that I feel comfortable with, that they could store snow, that the cars that are parked next to the street are going to be able to move in order for them to mitigate the snow. I think there's a lot of problems. And like I said, I had a lot of things I wanted to say, but I don't want to be redundant. And I think we are at loggerheads here because of the nature of this project and the piece of property. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Kelly Wenderson is in opposition and hasn't decided if she's coming or going.
I'd like to speak.
Oh, she's changed her mind?
I didn't see a spot on there where I just didn't see
No
it. where I was
problem,
supposed to
no
mark.
problem.
Apologize.
You are in the spot now, Kelly.
I'm a long-term resident in this area. And what I want you to picture is this is up on a
Stand in
hill.
front of the microphone, please.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
See how green it is up there? That's where all the water up there, the snow and stuff, soaks into that green. They've got 12% green space plan. That means 88% concrete and pavement. All that water this is on a hill. All the other houses look up at this. So that water is going to go down and flood all the neighbors' yards. It's going to flood.
Oh.
Corner here, where it hits
Please
the-
stay in front of the microphone.
Yeah, sorry.
That was God.
The corner there where it hits 17th Street, that's a funnel. All those cars are going to come down right there. That road narrows from barely 2 lanes to hardly 1 lane, right there, right where those cars come down. And that's where the kids walk to their bus. And so that, not only is the water going to funnel down and just flood everything, those cars are going to funnel down, and those kids are not going to be safe walking to school. That's a single lane alley right there that those kids walk on. And those cars are going to be, what do we say, 36 to 54 cars up there? That's where they're going to be driving. It's just, it doesn't make any sense. All the animals come down through this property, deer, wild turkeys, all of that's going to be concrete and pavement. And those, I don't know how these people think this fits into this neighborhood. Look at all the green there. That's all going to be gone. It just, to me, it doesn't make any sense at all. Nobody talked to me. None of these times they said they went to community outreach, none of the people I know in my neighborhood got talked to. So I hope that you deny this with prejudice. So that's my hope.
Thanks, Kelly. Eleanor Capal is against it, does not wish to testify. Carrie Dolman is against it, does not wish to testify. Tiran Joni is against it, does not wish to testify. Joyce something does not wish to testify. Greg somebody does not wish to testify. Sorry, you guys. Let me see, Al Mesa. Al, you made it. Thanks for hanging in there. Al wants to testify, if you didn't pick up on that.
In case you were wondering.
Okay.
Okay. I want to make this quick. So, first of all, this property, again, like everybody's saying, it does not at all match. And when you look at it, you can tell. My property is 1 acre. I just magically happen to be one of those that are close, that are larger. And that 17th alley, I will not call it street because it isn't, that alley is a playground. I'm not exaggerating. If you come any time in the summer, there are at least 24 children biking, running around in there. There are a lot of young families, and us old farts are actually quite fond of them. We really are. Because I've been there since we bought that place in the early 80s. So I've been there a while. The Coeur Lane, I remember Coeur Lane when all of it was like this. I remember the entire town being community like we are here. We do help each other. That windstorm we had 3 trees go across Gilbert. Within an hour, the neighbors got together and it was cleared. We didn't wait for the city. We didn't need that. Majority of these yards have raised beds. They're growing vegetables and fruits. If we want to have a sustainable community, if we are, and I know you are because you have said so over and over that you're looking for a community, this is what you're looking for. Our community here goes all the way down, all the way to the mountain on the Gulch Road. It goes all the way down to Best. All of these people are against it. Not everybody's here. Everybody couldn't be here. In fact, many people couldn't because of the timing. So believe me, there are a lot of people against this that are not here today. but they're counting on those of us who were able to be here today to help them out. We do help each other. And I have no problem with development up there. Already, 17th Street turns to a river when we get a fast rain. Already. You pave that, you are going to flood all of those houses that are already getting semi-flooded. A lot worse. Believe me. And if that doesn't open the city for a lawsuit, I don't know what would, because that really should, because this should not pass. I don't care what, you are not going to build your way into affordable housing. It has never been done in any town, in any city in the universe. Why? Because we have corporate takeover of our housing. We have all of our rentals almost are corporate owned. And the housing itself gets gobbled up. Every time the prices come down, like we had the crash, what happened? A bunch of corporate buyers came and bought them all. And then when it goes back up, they sell. This is not how we build a community. We have a community. Come take a look. I'm serious. Come, we welcome you. We walk, we talk, we are friends. When somebody needs something, we're there. We actually know each other. This is a community. And this project is destroying it. I'm sorry, but it does not fit. Thank you.
Thanks, Al. Hey, Paul DeRocher is in opposition, does not want to speak. Joshua Drossers is in opposition, doesn't want to speak. Clayton Ramney is in opposition, does not want to speak. Josh Millen in opposition, doesn't want to speak. Kathleen Vergas in opposition. It looks like she's changing her mind. There's a weird little mark there.
Yeah, I crossed it out.
That's okay. Welcome, Kathleen.
Well, we heard moments ago about one of the gentlemen speaking for Kaufman. He works for Kaufman, and he spoke in favor of his boss. What he wanted was to have this house. Well, moments before, his boss was speaking and said his entire statement refuted his employee's statement. He said that any developer can buy the units in gross and get a deal on it. He wasn't going to say no to it if that were to happen, if anyone was to offer, if he wanted to buy like all 5 or all whatever units, that he would give them a deal. And then yet he has his employees saying that he was going to buy like 1 unit, and that's going to be the way it's going to be. Well, his boss just refuted all that. So anyway, parking. My husband's truck would not fit on those driveway measurements that they have posted on his previous proposal site. I look around Coeur d'Alene, I see trucks. You're going to have a lot more cars parking on the street because they're not going to be able to fit on those driveways. They're going to be overhanging into the sidewalks, or they'll be parking on the streets. The other thing is, I looked at a lot of law dictionaries for the word adjacent because that was part of the things what it was refuted on. Well, what I was finding was that they are so joined or united to each other that no third object intervenes. So that would be a road. It doesn't matter if it's the highway, 325 feet as he measured, thanks for all that work, but that doesn't matter. It could be a road, just simple road, and what's across the street from that? That would be considered adjacent. All the dictionaries that I was looking at is what it said repeatedly. Then there's abutting, which would be right next to, but adjoining would just be a road, a river, but no third object intervenes. So I think he spent a lot of wasted time measuring roads. And that's pretty much it.
Catherine, thank you. Cameron Arms is against, does not want to speak. Marianne Blodgenger is against, does not want to speak. Michael Slack is against, does not want to speak. Sydney Kenya is against, doesn't want to speak. Connor Kenna is against and does not want to speak. Holy mackerel. I have 2 folks that came in late and they would like to speak, but they haven't been sworn in. So it would be Rhea Griffin and Jim Matthey. So are you guys still wanting to come up and speak? Yes. Then you need to stand and raise your hand. Oh, okay. You just have to listen to our clerk over here. She's going to swear you in.
Do you solemnly swear and/or affirm that the testimony you are about to give is the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Okay, come on up, Rhea, you're up first. Jim, you're right behind her.
Thank
Welcome.
you. I don't know if can you hear me? Yes. Okay. So I've lived in this neighborhood a long time. I live on Nettleton. It is everything everyone has said. I'm really proud to be part of such a community. It's a good walking community. People look at each other, help each other. It has gone through changes. Some are bittersweet as we've lost a lot of our environment. We have more and more wildlife coming close to town, to 15th Street. That concerns me that that hat trick thing was just a mess, and it created maybe some nice neighbors, fine, but there's a lot of extra parking on the street because of it, and it gets congested. We have a lot of deer, moose, turkeys, as everybody said, and I'm worried about the safety because we don't have sidewalks, the streets are narrow, and with all that extra parking, it's just going to be more dangerous for drivers, for walkers, pedestrians, kids, everybody. You know, it's nice to have the wildlife, but they're being moved out of their homes because of so much development. We've seen that for a long time. So again, this having developed, that property will be developed, we understand, but I just think it needs to be something that fits the spirit of the community, and that is what's being proposed is just way too big and disruptive to the beautiful sense of paradise that we have. You know, we're not against it changing, we just don't need it to be so drastic, and it will forever impact it in a negative way that, you know, will affect generations. And I will say, we have a lot of variety in our neighborhood, which I love. So it's, we have young people, we have older people, we have middle people, and that's what makes it work. It's very charming. We don't want to lose that. So thank you for considering.
Thanks, Rhea. All right, Jim, we're going to pack it home with you now. No pressure.
So my name is Jim Matthey, and I've been delivering mail in that exact neighborhood now for decades. I've seen it grow, and what I am noticing now, I'm going to only address traffic and traffic density. There's a tremendous amount of on-street parking that is developed on Gilbert and Steiner. Neither one of those roads are suitable arterials from 15th Street. Everybody is going to come off 15th Street to get to this proposal. And those streets are not easy to negotiate. The only good street that will have access is already pretty much of a raceway, and that is Nettleton Gulch. Nettleton Gulch is a arterial for a lot of area east of 15th Street, and that is the only street that is even close to being a real arterial. But there's no good access from Nettleton Gulch up 17th Street, and many people have told you already that 17th Street is nothing but a one-lane alley off of Nettleton. So the only way you're going to make that into a suitable access is to condemn and appropriate property from people on either side. They're going to pave 17th Street, I guess, because now half the time it's full of potholes. It's just a dirt alley. So just from the traffic standpoint, this is not a good idea. And I would, like Al said, I would urge each and every one of you to take a field trip out there, either together or separately, and look at this choke point for this proposal, and you will see that it is not a good idea. I'm not even going to talk about the compatibility thing because everybody's already handled that, but I second everything about the compatibility. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. So that pretty much wraps it up, you guys, and you did good. We appreciate you considering our time and your time and kind of get this all together. So I will now close the public testimony.
Mr. Mayor, you
Mayor Pro Tem,
need
you
to
need to
allow
let
the
the
Help me
applicant
out here.
rebuttal time.
Oh, that's right. Rebuttal from,
You take a brief pause after that?
yes,
Okay.
the old guys needing a pause.
I need a pause.
Okay.
Thank you for the opportunity to hopefully clarify some of those items that were brought up in testimony. So with regarding to some of the health and safety concerns, as Tammy had pointed out, there are over or 20-plus conditions of approval with regard to paving along 17th, internal streets. Streets and Engineering looked at it and felt that it did not rise to the level of a trip generation, or rather a traffic impact analysis. So if that would be something that would be required after this, we would entertain that on our end. As far as cherry picking one paragraph out of the comprehensive plan, that's simply inaccurate. They're talking about affordable housing, infill developments, different land uses. It's throughout the comprehensive plan, and I've read the entire document, so I know it very well. There is a lot of subjectivity, and I guess that's why we have public hearings for these types of things. Somebody pointed out whose math with regard to financing these is just way off. You would not require 20% down. The 20% down that I mentioned would be for an investment property. That's if somebody were to buy a duplex as an investment property. And I think Derek did a good job of talking about how banks will look at this product versus a duplex that would be an investment product versus what a condo would go for. Banks will lend a traditional 30-year fixed-rate mortgage on a townhome or a twin home because it does sit on the property and it does have its own legal description and it can be purchased fee simple. So that's just simply inaccurate. Some people mentioned how we were conveniently leaving out all the property to the east. Not really. That property to the east is actually a county island that's already using city services and is surrounded by city, but it is county and not part of the city's tax base, so that's why I left it out. Also, somebody mentioned that they own a 9-acre piece abutting this property. I think maybe he meant 9/10 of an acre because there isn't a piece of 9 acres abutting this property anywhere. Somebody mentioned that this is in a floodplain. I did actually do an analysis and research. Property is not in any known floodplain. We did the research. Stormwater is required by the city engineer, by the platting process, to be treated on site. Everybody is looking at conditions as they exist today. A gravel driveway, when it rains, of course, rain is going to go down. Engineers that spend 5 or 6 years in school and then have to pass a test and then have to design something that then has to be reviewed by your city engineer, stormwater has to be treated on site. Additionally, there is a stormwater system existing in 17th Street. That'll be incorporated into the design if we were to have to design 17th Street to pave it. We'd certainly entertain the idea of putting in a sidewalk if it would fit, but we're simply following the recommendations of the city engineer at this point in time. A lot of people talk about this alley on 17th Street. I've been out there multiple times. They're right. It's like a corridor. It's all grown over. It's tight. Nobody in their right mind is going to use that for their leaving and coming from this development. Everybody will funnel down Steiner, south on 17th, and on out to 15th.
What did you, sorry, what did he just say? I didn't understand what he just said about they'll funnel down.
I'm sorry?
Sorry, just, can you
So
just repeat that?
17th, if you look at 17th, right here okay, bingo, right? So this is the property. Our road is being designed right here. Nobody in their right mind is gonna go up here to Nettleton Gulch. You just wouldn't do it.
Can we, I just want to hear what he says. Do you mind if you guys just be quiet so I can just hear what he's trying to talk about?
That'd be great.
Your PA system, I can't hear.
Gilbert and Steiner are your immediate accesses over to 15th, which becomes your major collector down to the highway. Only people coming from the north on 15th, and I can't see any logical reason why anybody would cut off at Nettleton Gulch to go down this tiny little corridor to get to a street approach down here. It just doesn't make sense. Everybody keeps talking about this, which is an alley. It's a glorified alley. I
So-
don't understand why people keep thinking that.
So the parcel
this is-
below where your property is that goes south of 17th is wider than the piece that goes in front of Steiner and connects to Nettleton Gulch? Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely.
I just can see how that worked. Sorry about that.
It's okay. Somebody did mention that the driveways would not accommodate a vehicle. They're 20 feet from face of structure to edge of sidewalk, which is city code. They're built to city standard. The city engineer would not approve otherwise. So that's currently what is in city code. Again, we went round and round about the definition of adjacent. I got mocked for spending so much time on it. That felt wonderful, but regardless, we do have to use the term adjacent as defined in municipal code. That's what's codified. That's why I spent so much time on it, because depending on what dictionary you want to use, you're going to come up with different definitions of words. There's subjectivity there. So I used what was codified in municipal code. That's what I did. Somebody pointed out some contradiction between Todd and Derek. I think that she just misheard. Nobody talked about selling blocks to developers. Parking, once again, I cannot believe it's now the third time we've talked about parking. So I'll just do the math for you real quick. What's required per city code is 2 per dwelling unit. The garage counts, the driveway stall counts, just like everybody's home. Okay, so if you take the 9 2-car garage units that also have a 2-car stall in the driveway, that's 36 stalls for the 9 2-garage units. That's 18 for the 9 that have a single-car garage, for 54 off-street parking stalls for 18 units. That's 54 off-street parking for 18 units, and we've included an additional 20-plus on the private street for guest parking if needed. This development is more overparked than anything I've done in quite some time. And again, back to the community involvement. I mean, we have roughly 50 or 60 people here in a city with a population of roughly 60,000. I know they're the immediate property owners. I know they're passionate about this. I understand that. What this does come down to is that infill opportunities they're gonna go away. This will either become 18 twin homes or 16 duplexes. So all the conversations about traffic and choke points and all those sort of things, it doesn't hold up as I've identified, I don't know why I can't get this plane to land with the adjacent property owners. There is no talk about, does it fit neighborhood context? What's the architectural design? None of that comes into the discussion when we design a subdivision for duplexes. It's, can it be served by city infrastructure, which the city engineer has already indicated it can? Can we get a public street in there? We've designed one and met with city staff where they indicated that would fit our smallest road section. Can we get 50 feet of frontage on that street? That's it. Like, and can we get 7,000 square foot minimum lot size, 3,500 per unit? That's our review criteria. If the planning commission were to deny that subdivision that met all those criteria, they would be in violation of the owner's property rights. That's Idaho law. This is where we're at. I don't know why I can't get that idea to land. That we're proposing, even as one of the women stated, well, Hattrick Lane, well, that thing's an abomination. A couple good people in there. I like some of the people in there. But this, let's just assume all 18 people that would move in here are all going to be crackheads and just unmentionables. Like, that's what I keep hearing. I get it. We have to balance this out. That's why I think Planning Commission punted it here. And with that, if you have any other questions, I'll do my best.
Questions? Kiki, I see you working over there.
I know. I wanted to double check
sit
because
still.
you talked about the water issue. And I want to confirm with our city engineer, regardless of whether you put 12 duplexes in there that are right in title. I mean, I guess I'm trying to go to.
By right use.
By right use,
Yes.
30,000-foot view here. Tomorrow, you just say, oh, bag it, and the Kaufmans sell this property to somebody, just as it sits. They can come in and put 12 duplexes in,
8 structures, 16 duplexes.
8 structures, 16 duplexes, and all of this same criteria applies to that. All the same, sorry, not your PUD, but the stuff you just described. They have
That's
like
right.
6 items they have to, that have already been approved, that there's a street that can be
They
there.
have to perform a subdivision, because
Right.
each duplex needs to sit on its own lot.
Right,
That lot needs to be 7,000 square feet per 2 units.
but that's doable for a duplex. I mean,
That was
that's,
the exhibit I showed in
So-
my
got it.
slideshow, that we proved we could fit it in there.
so what I wanted to just confirm is this water issue that people were concerned about.
Stormwater?
The stormwater, regardless if it's your project or a subdivision, is required by the city to have that stormwater remain on site.
No, that's where there's some nuance. If it's a city street, city streets have to be designed with a roadway section, curb and gutter, a street side swale, which is where the stormwater is treated, and then a sidewalk. So in that instance, when it becomes a city street, the developer builds the infrastructure, builds the street, and then all the pipe that's in the ground underneath, the sewer, and then dedicates it to the city, and it's the city's responsibility to take care of. But it has to be designed to city standards, which includes, and I don't care how steep it is, there are steep roads all around our city. Engineers get paid to make sure that the stormwater runoff is treated, and it goes into the aquifer pre-treated.
So both
That's
the
what they get
example
paid to
you
do.
showed of the supposed duplex subdivision or your PUD, both have addressed the water issue.
100%.
I have another question on something I saw on one of the plat maps, and maybe this is the hat trick, I don't know what hat trick is that people are talking about, but on one of them, it looks like an easement that goes out on the east side of your property and connects to Nettleton Gulch at 19th.
It's an abandoned right-of-way, I believe.
So, but it's not something that's been discussed as being an ingress-egress road? It's not big enough.
It was an abandoned right-of-way dedication that has now become owned by the property owner
Adjacent
adjacent to
property
it.
owners.
Yeah.
Okay, just didn't know what that one was. And is 17th an alley or is it a street?
I think it's a city street. It performs like an alley.
Chris? It's a street. It's a street. It performs like an alley. It looks like an alley, but it's legally a street.
Technically a street.
Okay. Do we plow that? Is it snow plowed? Do we plow 17th?
Sorry, what did you say, do we plow 17th? Yes.
Okay.
How do you fit a plow truck down there?
Well, it's 20 feet curb to curb. Well, I'm not talking about the alley portion, the
think that's
alley-looking
what she was
portion.
asking.
So alley-looking portion of 17th?
Yes, I don't know how we handle that. I don't deal with snow plowing operations, but it's a
And we
tricky
have some,
portion
we
of
have
the
some
street.
alley/streets around town that are kind of all of that. And then, okay, I have a couple of others, but I think they're for other people.
Any other questions? Thank you so much, appreciate that.
Thank you.
We're going to take about a 6-minute. Oh, I closed the hearing. Close public testimony? It's not the way it reads here. I'll talk to you later. All right, we're going to take about 6 minutes because Dan's got to go, and we'll be back. Okay, we're going to call this back to order. Thank you for giving us a little breather there. We went for sugar and beer. Just kidding on the beer. So the hearing is now closed. City Council will deliberate and determine whether the proposed use conforms to the applicable special use permit criteria. Council may affirm the Planning Commission's denial or affirm the denial of such reasonable conditions as are in its judgment necessary to ensure conformity to the criteria. Remand and matter back to the Planning Commission for further proceedings, or reverse the decision and approve either or both applications. Does that make any sense?
No.
Me neither. Randy, help me through this, okay?
I will, and it's not a special use permit. It was a PUD and a subdivision.
And you didn't write this. Okay. All right. So we're good?
Yes, you're good to debate.
Good to debate. Mr. Buchan.
Well, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I have some questions of staff based on some of the things that were brought, and I don't know who's going to answer them. I'm glad Chris is here. But let's talk about the street. Let's talk about 17th Street. So in the staff report, it says that the street, 17th Street, which is street, is a gravel street with a concrete curb, and that frontages, there will be improvements required. Where did I read? Did I read somewhere that it was only 20 feet wide now, or was that just someone was saying it's about 20 feet?
Yeah, it's about, well, it is, measures curb to curb inside 20 feet. I think it was actually 19 and a half feet at one end of it. It's pretty narrow. But it was built with concrete curb on each side for a lot of it, but it's a gravel surface.
And so in your staff report, you mentioned that it needs to be widened to 25 feet. And then Mr. Matthey said that we might have to use eminent domain to do that. How is that going to work?
No, the statement about 25 feet was the dedication of right-of-way to get a 25-foot right-of-way through that north end of where the property is, because I believe the property line goes out into the street there.
So we'd have to acquire the right-of-way?
From the applicant.
From the applicant?
From the applicant. We're not looking at changing the right-of-way of any of 17th Street, which is what makes this whole development, the area that it's in, kind of unique, and the fact that it is a very narrow 17th Street with a gravel surface. There's only 25 feet of right-of-way there to fit it, so there's no room to put a sidewalk on there, and even if there was enough right-of-way, it would be taking out part of people's driveways and trees and things like that. And then, yes, the portion that goes up to Nettleton Gulch, I think it narrows down to like 15 feet. It's definitely a one-way street from the north end of their property up to Nettleton Gulch.
Is it a one-way street?
It acts as a one-way street. It looks like an alley. If you saw it, you would never think that it's a street.
It's not one-way, it's two-way.
All right. And what is the standard width of a street in the city of Coeur d'Alene if we were doing a new subdivision?
Well, they could, depending on if parking was required or not. If they were putting parking in, it would be 28 feet. They could go down to 24 feet with no parking.
Okay. So is that, then right now there's parking on that street?
On 17th?
Yeah.
Well, parking is not prohibited. I wouldn't say that it's allowed. We would never build a street that narrow and allow parking on it. The residents there park and they don't tell on themselves, so it works just fine.
How do you, what is the math or the formula you use, the function, to determine impact to a street, given a number of cars?
Like the numbers that I had in?
Yeah, so what you say this will, in your staff report, it says that it will not be, well, you don't have any objection to it, but how do you gauge the impact of a number of cars on a given street?
So the way that I have to look at it is I have the Institute of Transportation Engineers, the trip generation manuals, and you take the land use code, the land use type that they're proposing, whether it's townhouses, condos, a factory, whatever, and they have graphs in there and equations actually too, that you can figure out based on a number of different factors how many cars would be generated from said development. A lot of times it's the number of units, sometimes it's the number of square feet, and then they base that on AM or PM peak hours, and sometimes they have just totals during the day. But that's all based on the fact that a unit that holds 2 cars is only going to have 2 people driving in it or whatever. I mean, these are estimates based on national trends.
And what's the threshold for when it becomes unsustainable? I mean, what are we trying to avoid by having these limits?
Well, traffic congestion to the point where it's gridlocked.
Right.
I mean, it would be a long ways from that. This would be a major inconvenience in the neighborhood, just on 17th Street itself. Just because I don't know why it was built that way, but that's what we have to deal with.
So if they made a commercial development there, say a restaurant or something, and it had how many seats, I mean, you obviously would say, well, you can't put it in here because there's going to be too many cars going in and out, right?
Right.
That's what we're trying to avoid.
Right.
Okay. All right. Let's see if there's anything else. A lot of the questions were on 17th Street. I think you covered stormwater. Thank you, Kiki. And yeah, just a general comment to Mr. Matthew, who came up and spoke about field trips. We're not allowed to go out and look at the property. Yeah, that was a new rule that they said like 10 years ago. We used to be able to go out and look, but the only way we can do it now is if we actually convene a meeting of the city council on site. So we have not seen this. We do not know anything outside of what was presented here. So thank you.
Ms. Wood.
Thank you. Well, I would just follow up with that a little bit, Al. I don't need a field trip. I've lived here for decades, and in the 80s, I lived on Nettleton Gulch. I raised my baby right there. We had a big front yard and loved it there. It's one of those areas where you're 5 minutes from town, you live in the country. And so I completely understand the tone of the neighborhood. Council's asked a lot of questions tonight. I do feel like I've gotten those answers. I would say that Mr. Kaufman's been here a long time too. He's an Idahoan. He's done some real quality projects here. So I don't find any fault with what, he's trying to make a living. I don't find any fault with that at all. But I would say that the planning and zoning got it right, that it doesn't meet with the neighborhood. It just doesn't conform to the neighborhood. And so I'm not able to support the project just based on what it will do to that neighborhood. And it feels like we've been here before and we'll probably be here again with other neighborhoods. We are going to have to allow some development where it makes sense. And this is just too dense and doesn't even meet the design of the neighborhood. So it's very difficult for me to vote to approve this. But I do want to make it clear that I think he's done quality projects in the past and he'll continue to do some in the future. I just don't want to see this kind of project in this small piece of land in that neighborhood.
Kiki.
I've got a few things. I know, questions. I'm the question person today, and I don't know. I just want to get this right. I think this is so important to this community. It's so important to all of us. And I'm recalling, Woody just got back from a visit somewhere, and he said, all these places I used to go, they've all changed. Everything's changed. And Nettleton Gulch was my bus route when I was in school. That was a neighborhood I went through. And things are changing. It's really tough. It's really tough to sit here and look at the stuff that we're trying to do the right thing by everyone. But I had a couple questions that I need to get cleared up. And somebody, I don't know, there's acreage that I asked about, like if anybody knew about what sizes were up there. But this question I can't quite get to my head. So Hillary, if you had an acre or a 0.9 or a 0.75 in an R12, what is the governance that says what you can build there? If you sold your property, what could you build on 0.75 acres in an R12?
So it's based on, so the gross density is that 12 units per acre, so you would factor that in, but then it also depends on what the square footage per unit is based on the zoning code. So you saw the deviation request was it was reducing that down. So for a duplex, it's 3,500 square feet per unit is what's required for the lot size. So it breaks that down, plus you have to meet the minimum road size. So as Chris said, for a paved road, that's, I think, curb to curb, would be the 24 or 28, but then I think that's 50 feet approximately of right-of-way that would have to be platted, so you have to factor in all those things. So it's difficult to say. But so that's when you look at a PUD and you can kind of put all that aside and you can still get that density, but you can ask for deviations with the road widths. You can ask for different things if you provide the concessions like the open space.
So I understand on this piece of property, they've already, according to testimony here, said, we know we can do 16 duplexes.
Correct.
8 duplexes, 16 units.
Right.
And they're asking for 2 more units.
Right.
In the PUD.
Right.
I'm asking about the adjacent or abutting neighbor that has 3/4, and I do have a point here, has 3/4 of an acre.
Right.
In this zoning, what can they build?
So we'd have to, again, I didn't even check the math to see, but so you're factoring, so if your maximum you could ever do would be you do 0.75, so that's your acreage, and then you do times 12. But then you have to factor in all those other things. So, because the reality is, what can you actually build on the ground? And that is factoring in the road widths and the swales and all the other things you have to do, plus meet the minimum lot sizes. So I think that's where they did the math and they figured out that 16 would work if they just did a straight subdivision, even though theoretically you could get more than that with the size of the property.
And my question is kind of going to what we're talking about, the comp plan. And the comp plan says, this part of town is going to be appropriate in the future for infill and compact housing. So I'm trying to say that's supposed to be one of our planning commission's guiding properties, and that's part of one of the crux of this appeal, right? Where they said they disagreed with their interpretation of that. So it gets me thinking, this person who has an acre that's right next to them, that's on whatever street it might be, in the future, our comp plan's going to say, this is an appropriate infill acre, which could have 12 units on it, and let's say only 6 fit there, or 4 fit there because of the configuration of the size. In the future, that property could turn over, and they could have a situation where they have no appeal in this particular neighborhood, and 4 new homes could be built there. Is that true or false?
It really, it depends. So theoretically, yes, if it met the zoning and they were doing it by right and not asking for anything different where they had to come before you like this, a PUD where they're having to say, do you agree that it meets all these findings? If it's a straight subdivision and it met all that, that is true based on if they have the underlying zoning, they meet the density, that's the factor for that. The comprehensive plan, so our new comprehensive plan that was adopted by council, this is the first time we've done a future land use map. And that helps guide kind of the decisions, in addition to all the other factors, all those maps showing the transit, the bikeways, pedestrian, all of that, the goals, objectives, those are all things you have to consider in it. It's not just one or the other. And when we did the future land use map, we asked the community to give us input. And so we had thousands of community members that came together. And so we were kind of looking at it, where do we put the growth in the city? But we weren't looking at parcel by parcel by parcel. So it's a guide. It's helpful for you to kind of evaluate. It's helpful for planning commission to make decisions, but it's not the law, So again, there's flexibility in the land use map, there's flexibility in the compact designation, because might make perfect sense on one parcel, and another one, you might say, well, I don't know, that doesn't really look like the location for commercial use, even though it says it should be commercial, so.
Okay,
Hopefully
that helps.
provide a little
I mean, it does help,
clarity.
because I guess what I'm trying to wrestle with here is we have two things that we're looking at, and our job is to be thorough and say, what's the future, what's the decision? Did the planning commission make the right decision, correct, by saying, that it's not compatible? And I hear all these people, and I totally appreciate your comments and where you're coming from and your passion about your neighborhood. I also see an opportunity. And the opportunity is that we do have a housing crisis, and it's getting worse. And we do need to have places for local workers to live. So we've talked about some of that, and affordable housing can be defined if you deal with AMI and what the prices of those can be. You can't tell a developer what to sell their property for, but you can put some sideboards in there, and I don't think we discussed the development agreement because maybe we didn't have a point to be there. In the future, this area is going to have this come back again and again because there's just not more land. So we have an opportunity to say, if these folks walk away today and we say, no, we agree, they can sell this property and there'll be duplexes in there next year. And they'll have exactly what they don't want, is duplex rentals in this property, because there's nothing prohibiting that I've heard right now. And so my feeling is that we have an opportunity as a council to put more conditions, to put more requirements to protect these people's neighborhood, because the right and title to what they have to build right now is what these folks are upset about, and they're going to get that anyway. And I'm struggling with a way to say, how do we, the water issues and those little issues that we've talked about, that's part of engineering and development that's going to be addressed, and it's not going to, it shouldn't be your issue, but the number of people, the traffic, the street, all of that, without us doing anything, even if we say, no, we deny this PUD tonight, you're going to have those duplexes in there, because that's what somebody with the money to buy that property is going to make the most money off of. So I'm just looking at the opportunity to say, do we have the ability to protect the neighborhood in a way that they, that we can do legally, because it is the law that somebody has a right to develop their property, and can we protect these neighbors while we have this chance in front of us? That's where I'm at with it.
Dan?
Okay, well, I appreciate hearing everything tonight. I'm born and raised here, so I've been there whole lots of times, and, can pretty much picture it in my head. I do believe a lot of the things that have been mentioned, like the small housing stuff and the project, we do need those. And actually, some of what we got rid of, the pocket housing and stuff, I think is a mistake. We should look at it, bringing that back. But I don't believe this is the place for that to happen. I think considering those things and the compatibility, certainly can't be the only thing, but it is a big thing, and I think that's a major consideration. And in terms of what they have the right to do, tomorrow, they don't have the right tomorrow to come in and start building duplexes. They've got a right to, put in for subdivision and go through the stuff, but that's not what we're talking about or making a decision tonight is on what a hypothetical neighbor on a hypothetical acre land that could be narrow or square. What we're deciding tonight, as I see it, our decision point is, do we allow this planned use development, which I agree has its place, but the way I also interpret it in plain language is it's a way that we've put in there. I mean, we've got rules and regulations and standards that we think these are what everybody ought to meet. These are the minimums, but there's a way that you can get around them if you, kind of not overdo, but I mean, if you make some adjustments, concessions, and I think that has a place in different times and stuff, but it ought to be, the exception rather than the rule. And so tonight, what we're being asked is, and based on the Planning Commission's hearings and findings, and after hearing this tonight, I think they made the right decision, and I've not heard anything to make me think, now we ought to go a different direction. So, thanks.
Cool. How you doing? I'd like to make a move to affirm the Planning Commission's denial of S523 and PUD 123 applicant Todd Kaufman location 2810 North 17th Street, a proposed subdivision in PUD Kaufman Estates, and direct staff, can I just say to adopt the findings and order that was denied by planning? Then I will make that motion. Thank you.
Second.
Kenny? Okay.
And Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, if I could, I want to thank you all for showing up. I really appreciate it. You go out of your way to do it. I know there's not the entire city here, but there are the people who care who are here. I admire Al's passion a lot. And Amber Hicks, thank you so much for coming in and defending your neighborhood. I do appreciate that. But do remember what Kiki said, is they do have a right to build those duplexes on that property. So, this doesn't mean that it's going to be a single-family home forever. Thank you.
Randy, we're covered?
Yes, you will be, the staff will prepare findings and a conclusion based on council's statements.
And you're good with that?
Yeah, I'm good.
Street Boy, are you okay?
Well,
I tried. I tried to get some.
All right. Discussion. Motion on the floor. Any thoughts, comments? Okay. It's a roll call, Sherry.
Evans?
Yes.
English?
Yes.
Wood?
Yes.
Miller?
Aye.
Gookin?
Yes.
All right, we're
Motion
done.
to adjourn.
Second.
Moved and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye.